everyone. Welcome to Raven's Real Talk. For those of you who don't know what Raven's Real Talk is, it is a talk show where we talk about real life topics that have either affected you or us or could affect us at some point in our lives. And the purpose of these talks is to create awareness and educate ourselves and others and to share experiences. But ultimately, the ultimate goal from all of these talks is to grow and become a better person and challenge our thoughts and have discussions and just hopefully grow from it, you know? So today, as you all know, I am going to be joined by three very scrumptious friends. We have DiscipleDashni, Samurai Speak, and Roroni Shogun, who I am going to be introducing in a second. But before I do that, let me say hello to everyone. Hi, Snow. Hi, Brandon. Hi, Double Take. Thank you so much for introducing me to Samurai Speak, by the way. I really appreciate that. This is going to be an incredible discussion. I'm very excited already. Hi, Dashni, of course. And Samurai, hello. Thank you so much, Slave, for that scrumptious host. And Shogun, you as well. Shogun, hi. Running to the butter real quick. What's poppin' Speak? Oh, Wonder Boy, thank you so much for that scrumptious resub. I really appreciate you spending your hard-earned money to support the channel. Thank you very much. And of course, as a thank you and as a way of promoting physical fitness and activity on my channel, I will be doing 5 exercise reps. Thank you. Or sorry, 10 exercise reps since this is a resub. Ken, sorry, I couldn't read that properly. Kennard91, thank you so much for the follow. You saw that, Raven. That was you. You are now under my wing. Welcome. So what we're going to do so that we don't interrupt the discussion, I'm going to collect all the reps that I have to do for any subs or raids, and then we'll just do them all together. We'll clump them up all together and do them at the end. And if we have enough, like if we have like over 60 or over 70 reps that I need to do, we'll just do like a plank hold or something. We'll figure out something creative to do, something fun to do. Did I say hi to Slay already? No, I just said I thanked you for the host. Hi, Slay. Brandon, thank you so much for that host as well. Thank you, Shogun, for letting them know to tweet out and host the stream. Let people know that the dialogue is going on. Thank you very much, Dashni, for the host as well. Slim Tick inbound. I hope so, man. I feel like my booty's sagging a little bit, you know what I'm saying? Gotta get that Slim Tick going on. Alright, guys, without further ado, here we go. I'm going to be introducing my first guest, who I had the pleasure of meeting through Twitch Sings. Another wonderful person that I met through Twitch Sings that I have not yet had the pleasure to meet in real life. Please welcome DiscipleDashni.
This when I sent the picture to Raven.
Hey.
Dashni, do you want to tell us a little bit about yourself?
I am a variety streamer from Boston. I love anime. I love soccer's my favorite sport, so I love playing FIFA. I play Twitch Sings where I met the lovely Raven. I love playing Call of Duty as well. What else? I play some fighting games, you know, like Street Fighter, Mortal Kombat, on occasion. The old school Naruto Ninja Storm games, where it's some of my favorites. Like I said, I'm an anime dweeb, so they're pretty much it. Like for me, it's like video games have been my escape ever since I can remember. Like even though I play on PC, I play with the controller because I was born with a controller in my hand. Keyboard and mouse just doesn't do it for me. I tried and I failed miserably.
So, controller is your thing.
Yes.
All right. Weebs unite! All right. And of course, the next scrumptious friend that I was fortunate enough to meet is a huge thank you to Double Take Official, who saw my tweet for the call out for this talk and said, hey, I think Samurai Speak would be perfect for this. And Samurai so graciously accepted and was totally okay with joining in on the talk. So please welcome Samurai Speak. Hello, friend.
Hello, everyone. Samurai Speak. I like anime, just like my fellow anime lover up there. Um, I'm a streamer, but I don't really stream that much. I really just like to play games. I like these discussions, so I wouldn't consider myself a streamer. I enjoy doing things. I guess that's it. I'm not very good at doing introductions, so.
Well, that was great. That was awesome. Well, thank you for being here. I appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
You're
Shout out to the gang.
welcome. Last but not least, we have someone I was actually met through Twitch Sings, but got to know further to Dare to Duet. We were on the same Dare to Duet captain panel together, okay, which was super fun. And then I got to meet him in real life, guys. It was so exciting. Please help me welcome Roroni Shogun. Hi, Shogun.
Hello, y'all. What's up? Thank you so much for having me. But yeah, it's the anniversary of us being on Dare to Do when we were captains. It was the 30th last year, but yeah, I got a notification on Facebook this morning about it. I was like, wow, look at time.
Wow.
Just in 1 year. That's ironic. But so a little bit about me. I'm a variety streamer. I love anime as well. Thus the Rurouni in front of the Shogun. If you guys have ever seen the TV show Rurouni Kenshin, it's incredible. It's one of the best shows in the world. But but also I'm an actor, or normally I would be acting or on set throughout the summer and things like that. But COVID has really messed that up. But it's presented a very unique opportunity for the society that we live in and for discussions like this one. So Raven, thank you so much for having me, for having us. I appreciate it, and I think it's really necessary.
Thank you. Absolutely.
Thank you.
And I really appreciate. I was
much.
speaking with them earlier. You're welcome. And I was saying thank you very much for allowing me to have you all on my platform and using your own platforms to spread the message, spread awareness, and educate yourselves and others, because these are conversations that might be uncomfortable for some people, and I acknowledge that and I accept it and I understand it, because for a lot of people we also have to understand that maybe they didn't grow up in a household where these discussions took place. Maybe they grew up with privilege, so they never even knew that this was part of the world that they lived in. So only now a lot of people are kind of getting aware of, like, they're opening up their eyes and realizing that the world is so much more than what they've experienced. And I want this space to be not only a positive space, but also a space where people are welcome to ask questions, people who are genuinely interested in educating themselves and learning. Not people who are trying to poke holes and trying to find reasons to hate. That's not what this place is for. But if there's anyone in chat who has questions, who genuinely want to learn and understand things from other people's perspective, please do not hesitate to ask your questions, or message me even privately if you don't feel comfortable speaking here. I would be more than happy to answer any questions. I don't know if any of you feel comfortable with people messaging you questions, or if they have any things that they want to run by you, or questions that they might have.
My DMs are always open.
Not to put you on the spot, but I just wanted to open up the floor if anyone of you are okay. So Dashni said he's okay with it, and if either of Shogun or Samurai are willing to, they will mention it to you as well. So Samurai gave
fine with it as well.
Awesome.
I don't have a problem. I hope that even in these conversations, we have to have grace for one another, and I hope everyone in the chat, we have grace with people in the chat, because again, we've never lived a year like 2020 before. Like, let's look at it with that perspective. This has never happened ever. So we all have to come to the table willingly and open-minded. So yeah, if you guys have questions or anything like that, I'm fine with you guys asking. But please, as well, listen. We have 2 ears and 1 mouth for a reason. So yeah.
That's the truth. Tell me. Zakia Nama, thank you so much for the follow. You saw that, Raven. That was you. You are now under my wing. Welcome. Thank you very much, guys.
Zakia.
Thank you.
I love Zakia. She incredible.
Really? Oh, I don't know you yet. Well, now I know you, so thank
right
you.
There. She a real one.
She a real one.
Not only that, we found out Zakia only lives like 15 minutes away from me.
Come on.
Wow, what are the chances? Well, once COVID is up, maybe you guys should have a meetup or something. Like, get all the people in your area, because I'm pretty sure now that COVID's happening, everyone's trying to touch base and be like, where do you live, where do you live, where do you live, let's see like if we can like go on our little walks together or something. But as Shogun said, and as I mentioned earlier, this is a space that is open for inquiries and asking questions and educating yourselves. That's what we want. That's what we want to create. But this also should be a respectful space. So please do type !code to find out more little rules that I've set in place so that this is maintained as a respectful environment where we are able to learn, but we're also able to respect each other's points of view. If you come in hot and heavy with your aggressive point of view, it's not going to go well for you, and unfortunately you will not be encouraged to partake in this discussion, because this is not that kind of discussion. I do want to start with a couple of disclaimers before we dive into our agenda that we have planned for today. I want to start off by saying this is not a white hate session, although a lot of our conversation will surround white privilege and the injustice of predominantly white people against minorities and black people. This is not a white hate session. I really want to make that clear, because there are a lot of people that feel targeted with all of this stuff happening on social media. And I think what people need to realize that it's not about you. Are you a racist? Are you openly and being are you discriminating against other people? If you're not, it's not about you. So please keep that in mind. It's not about you. We're just talking in general, and we're trying to spread awareness. Although we are focusing on Black Lives Matter, we are strong advocates for all lives matter. I don't think any of us here would want to see anyone getting hurt. We do not preach hate in our communities. We don't promote injustice. We don't promote violence. We don't promote the killing of any race, religion, sexual orientation, or anything. So I also want that to be clear, that although we're focusing on Black Lives Matter, this is not taking away from anyone's suffering, anyone's oppression, anyone's any genocides that are happening around the world, any killings that are happening, any injustice, any abuse, any harassment that's happening in the world. We're focusing on one fire, but that doesn't mean that we're dispelling the other fires that are happening around the world. They exist. We acknowledge them. We respect that they are happening, but this is not a competition. This is not like a misery competition where we're like, yeah, but my misery is worse. No, but mine is worse. Like, this is not a competition, okay? So please keep that in mind. Are there any... Oh, and the other disclaimer I would like to say is that we are not experts. We are not lawyers. We are not historians. So although we are going to be talking a lot about history, and a lot of conversations are going to happen around policing laws and laws in the states, does not make us experts. So please keep that in mind. We are just educating ourselves. We've done our own research. But if there is something that you have maybe found research that contradicts the research that we've done, please bring it to light, explain it to us, show us, educate us. But keep in mind that we are not experts, and we are not proclaiming to be experts. Are there any disclaimers that you guys would like to say before I explain what the purpose of this conversation is?
None that I can think of.
Yeah.
No. Okay. Awesome. So before we dive into our talk, I do want to mention the purpose of this talk is to create awareness about some of the issues and sub-issues that relate to the Black Lives Matter movement. And we'll explain and discuss systemic racism, symbols of racism, implicit bias. We want to know what that is. We want to explain what privilege is. And then we want to dive deeper into how these play a part in our society by discussing things like police culture, police training, civilian rights, de-escalation techniques, and violation of these rights, and police brutality, and many other topics. And I'm sure organically, like, some subtopics will come about that I haven't discussed here. So just be prepared for those as well. And before I continue, let me just catch up on chat really quick in case if there's anything that I missed. Also in advance, if I do miss something in chat, guys, I'm very sorry in advance. Sometimes we're so engrossed in discussing things with each other or talking with each other, and I want to give everyone my full attention when Shogun's speaking, when Dashni's speaking, when Samurai's speaking, that I might not read all the comments, but just know that I will try to take out time after each section or after each topic that we discuss, and we will address some of the comments that are being spoken. And I really encourage you all to dive into these topics with us. Let us know your opinions. Let us know your thoughts. It's a discussion. It's not a lecture. Like, we're not lecturing you guys. It's a conversation that we're all involved in.
It's not really a disclaimer, but it's kind of like an add to.
Go for it.
For that. Also, you guys, please be aware that all of us are people of color on this panel. So we represent a voice of information. We have experienced different things. We've all had a different experience. I will never experience what Raven has experienced. I will never experience what Disciple has experienced. I will never experience what Samurai has experienced. However, that does not negate the actuality of it. Okay, so as I cannot say that your life doesn't matter, because again, we've already come to the understanding and the common typical idea that all lives matter. When we say Black Lives Matter, we're saying, look, this is where the fire is burning the most and where the least amount of attention is going. So again, going back to that, Grace, please listen to our experiences when we share them, as we share these facts. And also, if you guys haven't already, please make sure you hit that follow button for Solo Raven and tweet out the stream.
Oh no, it froze. What happened? Did it freeze, or is it just me? Is it frozen?
Raven's
Oh, okay.
frozen in Discord.
Oh, yeah.
We're good.
We're
Oh
all
my god.
frozen.
We're good? Are we good? All right.
We're good.
I was
Scare
looking at
me.
the stream. I was like, wow, what a great face to freeze on. Don't clip that. But please, if you guys hear something or there's a topic of discussion, clip that topic and that discussion and save it. Share it on social media and things like that, because I don't know what part I froze on in this spiel. But if you guys see something that you like, please clip it, share it, and also tweet the stream, post the stream on social media, because this is a very crucial topic and dialogue that needs to happen. It needs to continue to happen. We cannot let things like this just go off into obscurity and be forgotten. Because change that is meaningful needs to be consistent. So thank you guys.
Absolutely. So before we dive into the, systemic racism and what racism is and all of that, I think we should start at the beginning. So let's just do a quick recap of when slavery began, civil rights movement. Who would like to start us off? I can even start us off, actually, if you'd like. I can start off with a little bit. Slavery began in the 16th century, so 1500s, and they called it the transatlantic slave trade / triangular trade, which basically, Lemon explained this the best. She's like, it's like a triangle. So Europe goes to Africa to exchange goods for slaves. Okay, so from Europe to Africa, they give them goods, they get slaves. They take the slaves, they sail them to America, and in America, slaves were being traded for products. So they take the products and they give them the slaves. Then those products will go back to Europe. Make sense? So from Europe, they take the goods, bring them to Africa, give the goods, get slaves, take the slaves to America, get products, take it to Europe. So that's basically what the triangle was about. Then slavery was abolished at the end of the Civil War in 1865, which I'm sure one of my damn scrumptious guests will go a little further in detail about the Civil War. And the Civil War, the research, like the little research that I did, was that it began primarily as a result of long-standing controversy over the enslavement of Black people. So does anyone want to speak further on the Civil War?
I can.
Okay. Go ahead.
Or
Yeah.
oh no. Well, like the South was very upset when Abraham Lincoln won the presidential election of 1860, and so in December, with the Republican majority win, and in December, I believe it was December of 1860, they decided to secede from what was known as the Union. And people want to argue over it. It was about states' rights, but it was really the right to continue to own slaves. What they wanted to preserve was the institution of slavery. And the funny thing is about it was the North wanted to preserve the Union. Lincoln didn't want it so hard to stop the South from seceding. Like, he didn't want to believe secession was a thing. And as much as people appreciate Lincoln, like, they need to understand, if there was a way to win the Civil War, to bring the South back, the states back, and keep slavery, he would have done it, because his main focus was keeping the Union intact. It wasn't really to end slavery.
Interesting.
I'm glad it came out as an end result of it, but if he could have kept the states together while keeping slavery intact, he would have.
So are you saying there was a partition that was happening between the North and the South, and he abolished slavery to keep it together and keep the states as a whole?
Well, they lost the war, so they made the. So that was the end of that. That was the end of that. Like, they weren't getting their way, but a bunch of Lincoln generals. But I know that through like many of the history classes, and even one of my favorite U.S. History professors, because he was like went deep into it. He was saying, like, if Lincoln could have avoided the war, or like kept the states in there, but like the North states, they didn't want slavery, like, but Lincoln like also didn't want the South to secede, but there was no way for the two to come together, like, on it, that whole. So like the North wanted to preserve the Union, but the South weren't going to stay in the Union because they were angry that Lincoln won, and they were already fearful of their rights to own slaves being taken away. So they were just like trying to get ahead of it and broke away from the country, which is really mind-boggling.
So I'm sorry, for me, someone from Canada that might not know a lot about U.S. history. So what does it mean? What do you mean by union? So in my head, I guess I'm thinking like work union. So
can I jump in?
Yeah, go ahead. Yes.
So with the Union, we are known as the United States of America. We have 50 states, but we're one big country.
Okay.
So when we say union, that's what we're talking about as a whole. All of us we're united. But when someone secedes, which is these southern states, they became the Confederacy.
And what does it mean to secede?
To secede is to say, I'm breaking away from your union. Oh. I no longer want to be a part of this country. We are becoming our own country. And that's what happened. That's what was the history. And if I may, so background on just kind of filling in the gap with Raven and Disciple's explanation of the Civil War, from slavery to the Civil War. You had 400 years from the 1600s to 1861 is when this whole debacle of the Civil War started. And it lasted for about 4 years. It lasted from April 12th, 1861 to April 9th, 1865. So this is 4 years where they seceded from the Union. Okay?
So the South became its own, the North became its own thing.
Mm-hmm.
And that was the Civil War.
And there were the Southern states. And those were two fighting sides, yes.
And why did they split? Why did they want to split?
Ultimately, it came down to slavery. Because here's the thing. For 400 years, the South had slaves, and they were viewed as property, not people.
Got it. And the North did not participate in this?
The North, so again, as the country was founded and as being made, of course they had slaves, but things started to industrialize in the North, and in the South they had a bunch of sharecropping. So industrial work and textiles was done up in the North.
Okay.
And crops and harvesting and all the hard manual labor was done down in the South.
Got it.
Slaves weren't necessary as much, let alone even a popular thought in the North. So they, like even now, the North was more advanced and progressed faster than the South. But the South, they continue to have people working outside. They had people, literally selling human beings to work rather on these plantations. And you're out in the sun. No one wants to do hard work like that, right? So for the North, for a Northerner to pretty much say, hey, you Southerners have to change how you're living and how you're treating these people, they didn't like that. Because one, you're affecting their money, and then you're affecting their livelihood. And if anything, if it wasn't about race, it was about money. And
As it always is.
to this day, we can see that. And if you're going to
Ain't
affect
that the
someone's
truth?
livelihood and you're going to affect somebody's money, that's going to be a real problem.
Mm-hmm.
So the American Civil War was fought in the United States from 1861 to 1865. Fought between the northern states loyal to the Union. Again, that's all the states
Got it.
that are combined. But the southern states seceded, so they didn't want to be a part of it. And they became the Confederate States.
Confederate States. Got it. Okay.
Also, to add on top of that,
Mhm.
each state, when they were seceding, they wrote up their own articles of succession to try and to declare their break from the Union. And one of the things that really pissed the South off was at the time there was a law known as the Fugitive Slave Act of 1850, which required fugitive slaves in the North to be returned to the South. But the North was real lax about that. And so the South got really pissed. And so for the South, they were trying to argue that, the Union is a compact which can be annulled if the states aren't satisfied in what they were getting from either other states or for the government themselves. So they were just, to put it simply, they were petty that they weren't getting their slaves back as well.
Right. And they would send people to the North, bounty hunters to the North, to bring back people they assumed were slaves. So they could be free black people, and they would take them and enslave them if they were given the opportunity. So
Actually, through my research, I found that even... sorry, go ahead, Samurai.
So just even though the North was against slavery, that doesn't mean like black people were free. In Oregon, black people weren't allowed to live in Oregon. They even had laws for black people that were in Oregon. They get whipped, I think 53 times every 6 months if they weren't gone. They had sundown laws. There was so many laws in Oregon that it's like a racist place. And I just don't want I don't want someone to think that the North was completely against slavery and that they were friendly with black people. They were still like, nah, we don't want y'all up here either.
That is such a good
Oregon.
point that you mentioned. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Because I would have thought that. I would have thought like, oh, okay, they were a little more, I guess, lenient or accepting of blacks. Not really.
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Nah.
That's really good to know. And through my research, I also learned that even though slavery had ended, the government still found a way to like have slaves but not really call it slavery. So what they would do is some states enacted what's called vagrancy laws, which made it illegal to not have a job. So that was predominantly geared towards black people. So if they didn't have a job, you go into jail. And then if you are a prisoner in jail, you were allowed to be hired in plantations. So you were given to plantation owners for like barely, like little or no pay. So people who had been free and like gotten off the plantations, if they didn't have a job, they were put right back onto the plantations, but not as slaves, more as workers that were not really being paid. But it's kind of the same thing-ish, and for to make things worse, it's just exactly. And to make things worse is they would make these loose laws, like laws against mischief and laws against having insulting gestures, which again made it easier for black people to be put in prison and then put into the system where they were put on plantations for work. So as you can see, that would be actually considered systemic racism. I think that would be the first, like the birth of systemic racism, if I can say that.
13th Amendment.
Yeah,
it's literally the 13th Amendment. The 13th Amendment abolished slavery except as a form of punishment for crime. Like, and what did they do? They started coming up with petty laws to fill black people, to put against black people, to fill them in the prisons and use as a form of slavery.
So I think it's safe to say like that was the first time that we can say in history that we like witnessed systemic racism. These were laws, policies that were put in place that give you the illusion that it's equal for everyone and free for everyone and all of these. And oh wow, look, we're doing something so amazing. Slavery's gone, but the laws in place are trapping black people and putting them exactly where the people in power want them to be, behind. They want to keep them behind. They want to keep them oppressed. They want to control that population. And that's how they did it, through laws. And the reason it's so important to mention these things is that this is not a thing of the past. It would be amazing if this was a thing of the past and then it stopped and then we grew and we became better as people and we just had this huge reform. But the point of having all these protests now is that the reform hasn't happened yet. And what is it, like 50, 70, 80 years later? I actually don't know when the Civil War ended. You said it was...
The Civil War it ended in 1885. So here's what we need to cover in reference to that. So the Civil War started in 1861. Then in 1863, Abraham Lincoln signed the Emancipation Proclamation, which said, if you own slaves, you pretty much need to free them. Okay, you freeing them, let them go. The South didn't like that.
Oh,
so
1865, Yolo said. So 1865, yeah.
Yeah, the war itself ended in 1865. But right in the middle of the secessions, he signs the Emancipation Proclamation, which is supposed to free all the slaves. The South says, no, they not being let go. And they start fighting in the war. You have all these battles and things like that. And you have Union soldiers, you have black Union soldiers going back to fight these Confederate armies and things like that. And then you have the Confederate army using their slaves to fight. So you have that crazy dynamic going on. And then in 1865, in April 9th, 1865, the war is over and the South has lost. And they're forced to come back into the United States, or they surrender, they come back into the United States. These slave owners are supposed to not have any more slaves, but all the slavery in the states didn't technically end until Juneteenth. And this is why Juneteenth is so important. June 19th, 1885 was when a Union ship had to sail all the way through the Gulf of Mexico and land in Texas and declare, hey, the slaves are free and the South lost the war, let them go. That's why Juneteenth is so important. That's why black people say that's our Independence Day.
Okay, one more time, please. Juneteenth.
So, the importance of Juneteenth is that a Union ship from the North had to sail to Texas, which was a southern state at the time, and they had to let the plantation owners and the slave owners know, hey, y'all lost the war. You need to let these people go, because they were still trying to get by
with slaves.
With slaves. They were still
trying
to get by.
I can't deal. I cannot deal.
This is 2 years, y'all. 2 years had went by because the Emancipation Proclamation was signed in 1863. It's 1865. So that's why black people celebrate Juneteenth, because that was our independence day.
And now I have a question for you guys, as I think all of the three of you are in the States, if I'm not mistaken. Okay, did you all learn about Juneteenth?
No, baby, I have to do my own research.
Listen to this. Listen to this, guys. Listen to this.
Not from school.
I grew up in Texas. xshadow_TV, thank you so much for the follow. You saw that, Raven. That was you. You are now under my wing. Welcome. And Erazo Gaming, thank you for the follow. You see that, Raven? That is you. You are now under my wing. Welcome. Please keep this in mind. These are our education systems that are supposed to be educating our children. Educating them with the truth. With the truth. And these are three Americans in three different states, I think. Do you each of you want to say where you're from? What state you're in?
Massachusetts.
I'm in Oregon.
Oregon, Massachusetts.
Shoot, I'm in the dirty South, y'all. I'm all the way in North Carolina.
And look at this. So you can't even say, that, oh, it's because they're all from the same state. These are three different states, and they all were not taught this. So it goes to show you that people who are, what do they say, like the victors write history or something, or
to the victor go the spoils.
Go the spoils, and that's history. And whoever controls the narrative controls the power, and that's the
right.
Isn't that sad? Isn't that sad? Which is even more of a reason that if any of you guys are choosing to be parents, make sure that you are educated yourself, and then you explain this to your children, because they're not going to be getting this from, unfortunately, the public institutions that are supposed to be educating your children.
Deathmage got it right on the money. They don't teach anything in school but George Washington Carver, slavery, Malcolm X, Rosa Parks, and Martin Luther King, and that's only
that is so true. I learned about Rosa Parks too. Oh my God, you are so right. Oh my goodness.
it's easier to sweep history under the rug and forget about it than acknowledge and change.
Mm-hmm.
And
Or
that's
to
what
rewrite
America
it.
is trying to do. Right.
That's what they're trying to do now.
And
And it's being successfully done through the Daughters of the Confederacy. They're spilling an entire lie about the true nature of the Civil War, and
Right.
people are believing this. That's
Can
why
you
they pass so much
please-
pride in the Confederate flag.
Can you please build on that? Can you please build on that? Because this is a real thing that's still happening to this day. There are viral videos going around of people fighting to defend and to keep Confederate flags, which is such a good organic transition into a conversation about symbols of racism. And flags are one of those symbols. So, Samurai, do you want to build a little bit more on that, please?
Yeah. So the Daughters of the Confederacy is basically the rebirth of the new Confederate. It's what do they call it? The new law or something like that. I might be getting that wrong. I'm gonna link a YouTube video in it that talks more about it, goes into detail. But they spin the tale of slavery as it was like black people and white people were together holding hands, and slavery wasn't as bad as it was portrayed. And then they give the flag as like a symbol of pride, something to be proud of. Like, this is our tradition. We have to be proud of this. It's a complete lie.
And that's why people are fighting to protect it. And
Right.
it's interesting because upon first glance, we would look at it like, I can't believe that you would be okay with the history that is behind that flag. Meanwhile, they are given the incorrect history. So everyone's being lied to, basically. Like, each person is being lied to in their own way. But then there's some people who knowing full well what the Confederate flag actually stands for, still choose to keep it. And fight for it and live by it and all of that. So it's just it's an interesting thing. Yeah, go for it.
I would say there's such thing as willful ignorance. And there are
Ain't that the truth? That is true.
when you know your history and when you know the truth, when you know better, you do better. That's what I would hope. Now there are those that don't know the truth in reference to the Confederate flag. But if you get down to the nitty gritty and you get to the ugly matter of it all, that's literally what it came down to. Now, when you say your history is rooted in 4 years of secession and rooted in 4 years of I disagree with you, so I'm going to walk out and make my own country, there's a problem, because you have to acknowledge that you're wrong. And a lot of people then, even to this day, have so much willful ignorance and pride in their mentality and mindset that they do not want to acknowledge that they are wrong and say, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
They don't want to be held accountable. I mean, even to this day, we're with various things going on Twitch and police brutality. It's always about accountability. Who's going to be the person to step up and say, "Hey, I messed up and I apologize." And from your apology, you need to change, because it's not really an apology. You're not really sincere or repentant if you do not change your behavior.
Agreed.
And
Agreed.
I mentioned this on Shogun stream when I was speaking on it the last time, and just for anybody, I'll say it again just because I know a few people weren't there. But the defense of the Confederate flag makes no sense whatsoever, because even if you wanted to spew something like heritage, not hate, and even if you want to claim that the flag itself isn't racist, which it is, at the very core, at the very least, the Confederate flag is the most un-American thing like in this country, because it resembles a group of people in the rebel states that broke away from the country. They did not want to be part of what was known as the United States at the time, so they broke away and they even elected their own temporary stand-in president. I believe it was Jefferson Davis at the time. Like, they separated from the country, so by succeeding, they were no longer part of America. So you can't raise that flag and celebrate that flag and claim you love this country, because the flag was representative of it was anti-America.
That is such a good point. And
I have a link.
that is such a good point, because for me, someone who does not know much about U.S. history, does not know what the Confederate flag stands for, does not know much about the Confederates, and I forgot the other side?
The Union.
The Union. I didn't know, like, I'm learning a lot myself right now. And I think what's so important to note is that Suga said this really good thing when he was here for the first Black Lives Matter talk. He was like, it's okay to be ignorant, but it's not okay to stay ignorant.
Right.
And in a time like 2020, when there's all these protests happening and there's all of this, we have the tools to do our own research, just like we all did, you have no right to just stay. It's fine if you thought at one point, like, my Confederate flag is what my parents built, or whatever truth you have, right? It's fine to have those views, but maybe start looking like, why are people, like, targeting my flag? Like, what's going on? If you are so passionate about it, right, the duty is to go and look deeper into it, like, okay, maybe there is some truth into what they're saying. And I think it takes a certain level of humility to acknowledge that maybe there is something more to this than I know. Maybe, like, why are people so angry about this? Why is there so much hate against this flag? Let's just see what else is out there. Let's see what else I can, like, get knowledge about. So I really like that you guys mentioned that that even though it's something that you stand with, just think about what it symbolizes. This is a flag that represents states that wanted to break away from the states. That is very, 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 very important to note. I'm just going to catch up on chat a little bit. I don't care if they fly the Confederate flag. It's just like waving a white flag, surrendering.
Ooh, right. Actually, with that, Raven, can I post a link in the chat? I have a receipt I would like to share.
Go for it. Yeah, absolutely.
While you're still reading the comments.
Shadow says, that's so unfortunate that our education system teaches us not to be biased. However, the system itself is biased. Tell me.
Good observation.
Tell me. That's the biggest problem. Kennard says that's the biggest problem mostly. No one wants to be wrong, or at least try to be educated on certain things. Exactly, and that's why I commend all of you who are in chat right now, whether you're here to support some of your favorite streamers, whether you're here to get educated, learn new things, spread awareness. You're doing your part. Like, we are each doing our parts just by being here and talking about this. So that's the best that we can ask for, since the education system and the government is not doing that for us. The Baton Rouge, Louisiana Deathmage says, bus boycott in 1953 was the first large-scale boycott of a southern segregated bus system. It inspired the Montgomery bus boycott that took place 2 years later. Who led that? Do you know, Deathmage? And was that after or before Rosa Parks? Because I know Rosa Parks was sort of
that was
what I learned. Okay. What I learned was the first. I know you said she's not the first one. I think you said Charlotte. Someone named Charlotte.
They didn't want to use her because she was too radical.
Okay.
Charlotte, you want to know?
Snow says it was also because she was underage and they thought she was pregnant from a married man. So Rosa Parks was a better face for the movement. Interesting.
Agendas.
Very interesting. Okay. I didn't know that. Hi, Ninja. Deathmage also says, I went to a stage play and learned about the bus boycott in Louisiana. Wow. We have to learn through other means. Erazo Gaming says, if it's not their opinion that you're telling them, they don't want to hear it. Closed-minded people are the reason for the stall in growth. Preach it. Preach it. Oh my God. Kyle Royce Place, thank you so much for that scrumptious raid and sharing our community of 7 people. Thank you very much and welcome everyone. Hi everyone, my name is Solo Raven. I'm a Toronto-based variety streamer. I am joined by the wonderful DiscipleDashni, Roroni Shogun, and Samurai Shpeak, who I believe is currently away from his desk right now, but we are talking about the Black Lives Matter movement and many subtopics that relate to it. So thank you for being here. I appreciate you. And as a way of saying thank you for that raid and as a way of promoting physical fitness and activity on my channel, I will be doing 7 exercise reps. So thank you.
What's happening, Kyle?
Black Mermaid says, most of the Black history replace dark skins with light skin to look more European or match cultural norms. That's always been a thing. Side note, I know this is not related to this. Side note. In India, there is or Pakistan, there is a cream brand called Fair and Lovely. Fair and Lovely. It's a skin lightening cream where you put it on your face and then you look beautiful. So it's not just you know, in America that this kind of shit go down. It's like all over the world where the fair-skinned people are often seen as the more attractive, the more intelligent, given the more opportunities. So it's a really messed up world that we live in that attributes certain characteristics with your skin color. It's very strange if you think about it.
And then you have to think about it, going back to that narrative though, Raven. Who controls the narrative?
Mm.
When you think about who's colonized the world and been everywhere and taken control of civilizations, it's
Yes.
often been Caucasian
Yes.
like people.
Yep.
And they set this standard of what beauty is. They set the standard
Yes.
of how it is, influences. So what has happened now in 2020 and the like is people are starting to realize, hey, this narrative has been controlled for too long.
Yep.
And history
Enough.
has been manipulated to look like, oh, well, if you look like this, you're beautiful. If you look like this, you're smart. If you look like this, and people are saying, no, I don't believe that anymore. And they have history, they have actual history, let me say that has been brought to the forefront, and now people are thinking, and people have the opportunity to think rather than just be told what to do. Because the same people that were controlling and manipulating history were the people that had to read it to them, because reading wasn't taught to slaves.
Was not, yeah.
If you were a slave and you learned how to read, you were immediately killed.
Yes.
That was...
Oh, God forbid they get knowledge. Educate themselves. Oh my goodness.
Yeah, imagine.
Because then they will overthrow us.
But I don't want to digress. That's we could be on that forever.
Right? Deathmage says there are lots of stuff we use today that black people have created, but we couldn't get credit for it because we were not human.
Facts.
We couldn't afford the pack.
Oh, girl, I've seen those creams all over. If you're dark, they don't want you. Exactly. Shadow says, shout out to South Asia. Yolo says, hey, I got a question. What's y'all's opinion on this destroying statue stuff? We're going to talk about that. Thank you. Funny you ask. It's a symbol of racism. So that is our next topic. Baby, you want to talk about it, guys? Let's go. Samurai, let's hear your opinion about destroying statues.
So I'm all for taking down statues, especially ones that have such a history and like hate. I don't know why we would have like a statue. Well, I can't say that. I can understand why white people would praise a statue that had slaves or a guy that had slaves. Like, you know what I'm saying? But I feel like as times progress, as people experience more things, like why is there such a pushback with taking these down when we understand they're so like backed with hate? And it's confusing. They're not really. It's like, how do they not see that what they're doing is like wrong?
Yep. I think I completely agree with that as well. So it's kind of like riots. Do I agree with riots? 100% no. Do I understand why they're happening? Yes. So it's the same thing with statues. Do I think that they should be destroyed? No. Do I understand why they're being destroyed? 100%. 100%. I get it. I understand that rage and that anger that's coming with... Okay, I'm gonna give you guys an example. I was thinking about this in the shower the other day, okay? Like, just bear with me because it might be like a trigger moment for some people, and I'm sorry if it is, but I think I need to say this to kind of like really send my point across, okay? Some of us have had very negative experiences with our families, okay? Luckily, I've not been that person, but there have been a lot of people who have been victims or survivors of domestic abuse, sexual harassment, sexual abuse by their parents. And imagine your mom or your dad was, because they contributed so much to society, okay? Their statue was put by your school, and you had to pass by that statue every single day, and be reminded of all the torture you went through, everything that was done to you, all the hurtful comments that were said to you. How would that make you feel? And this is our blood. Remember, this is someone who is blood related to you. And you're trying to say you don't understand how someone who is not blood related to you is triggering people who have been oppressed, whose ancestors have been raped, have been assaulted, who have been murdered by this person that they're constantly having to walk past, constantly having to look. I just don't understand, like Samurai, where the lack of compassion is coming from. If, like, there are genuinely people who have had these very terrible experiences with their families and they cut them out. They don't want to see them. They don't want to look at them. It's like they're filled with hate towards them, and rightfully so. And this is your blood. This is your blood, like your family. Imagine someone not blood related and you're having to see your abuser or your forefather's abuser constantly just there and praised like this amazing person. Would it not upset you? Would it not trigger you? So that's kind of what I think about when I'm trying to dumb it down for the people who are like, I don't see anything wrong in this statue. I don't understand why people are destroying it. It's a piece of history. But in my opinion, if that's what you're proud of, that's a problem. I understand it's part of your history, but I don't think it's something to be proud of.
I would go on to say, even, one, there's a hypocritical stance in it, because when you look at when America was at war with Saddam Hussein, and when those people were freed and liberated, they took his statue down. They destroyed his statue.
Sorry, excuse me, Shogun. I don't think I answered YOLO's. So I totally was... I forgot to mention that they should be taken down. That's the first thing. And I don't understand why people would disagree with that. And I do think that if you are going to... if you are going to make them, because some of these figures are people of... are of some historical value, I understand that, then tell the truth, though. And tell the proper truth. Like Columbus, people... don't know the full truth about him, and there are all these stories of his companions coming out of how he gave Indian people to his cruise ship to rape and do whatever they want with it, with the person. So don't just talk about the good parts, that he discovered land and spice and all this. Really, if you're gonna talk about someone, talk about all of them, explain all of them. So if you are going to put them in museums, tell the truth. Tell the proper truth. IMO, they should be like Nazi museums. What does that mean?
A Nazi museum is where they take information from the history period, because one, Nazi propaganda and information is not put in Germany. Anything Nazi related in Germany, they destroy. So a Nazi museum is, they've taken all this stuff from that age period and they said, this is where we're going to display it, and this is our shame.
Oh.
That's pretty much that.
So it's like the truth. It's the truth.
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly.
I agree then. But what I was saying is, I understand why people are destroying the statues, because there's so much hate and anger towards them, because city officials, apparently, guys, some of the statues, there have been protests to take it down in the past. But they weren't listened to, and that's why they're going off. So keep that in mind, guys. People are not just like suddenly waking up and tearing statues down. Some of them are. But like some of these people have actually been voicing their complaints about these statues to be taken down, and they weren't listened. So what do you think is going to happen? Sometimes you got to like rattle some cages to be heard, and that's what they're doing. That's what's happening. So I really like that Nazi museum idea. That's interesting.
I am completely and 100% for taking down the statues. Personally, I don't care if they're thrown into a museum or not. Just like take them down. Like, it's known throughout history, statues were built to commemorate and honor somebody, knowing full well what these men did and how vile they were and what they represent. Why are we keeping statues of them built?
That's a good point too.
To honor these horrible men. It makes no sense when we don't agree with their ideals and what they've done. Like, case in point, Robert E. Lee. Like, you know how evil he was. Like, you knew.
Sorry, who?
Robert E. Lee.
Can we talk about, like, I don't know.
Oh yeah.
Oh, were you gonna say Shogun? Go
Oh
ahead.
no. I was
Shogun's
gonna-
eyes, though.
Living in North Carolina, Robert E. Lee is one of the most celebrated Southern generals. Even like if you look at history, like he's one of the most celebrated and referenced generals. You have, is it Stonewall Jackson? Have you all heard of him?
Sounds kind of familiar. Stonewall Jackson. Sounds kind of familiar.
He's a general. Is he for the? He was a Confederate general. Another one. So another one.
Another one.
These generals get celebrated for the way that they used their troops and moved and fought off the. It's romanticized. Honestly, that's the best part. They get celebrated and romanticized on how they fought back against the Union and stood up for what they believed in and their American patriots. It's like, but you lost and your view was proven wrong. You know, you fought to keep people enslaved. So who Robert E. Lee is, he's one of the generals in reference to on the Confederate side of the Civil War. And he's celebrated in the South along with Stonewall Jackson, and they're commemorated with statues and things like that. But go ahead. I'm sorry.
Exactly, like they're evil men, and they lost the war. Why are they being celebrated?
Right.
Like you don't. Is anybody try? There's no Hitler statues, right? There really is no Hitler statues. Like no, like these are violent. They shouldn't be commemorated. And then, like people want to give this argument. Oh, well, you know, taking it down is destroying their history. Or you're gonna. There's no. Don't try to erase history. We're in 2020. How the hell are we erasing history in the age of information? Everything is online. Virtually everything is online. What is being erased? You have 5-year-olds on iPads. Okay.
What it really comes down to. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, it's you 5-year-old on iPads. Like everybody has an electronic device in their hands. Google is right there. You can't tell me history is being erased because a statue is being taken down. Like stop it. Or a building gets renamed. Fenway Park. When they rebuilt Fenway Park, did the history of that park get erased? When the Lakers moved from Minneapolis to Los Angeles, did the history of that organization get erased? No. Changing something doesn't erase the history of that thing.
Yeah.
It erases
Samurai,
that history if that history's not real. So a lot of the Confederate statues are put up by the daughters of the Confederacy. They're pushing their agenda onto the masses. So it's not like these things are being put up with good intentions. The intentions has always been bad, but history makes it seem like it's been good. And
sorry, go ahead.
We're not given enough I don't want to say credit, but we're not like pointing towards the daughters of the Confederacy enough, because this is a product of them. You know what I'm saying? These statues are from them. Their message, the lost cause, like this is them. This is they're trying to preserve that fake history to make it seem like, oh, this was never about slavery. This wasn't about like black people being bad. There was slaveries, but they were fine. They were good people. They were living with us. It's like, nah, shut the fuck up. You know what's going on. But you're trying to make it seem like, oh, this isn't really the case. This is something completely else, and your guys' information that you're getting is wrong. And it's like, nah, the information that you're making is wrong, and you're spreading it to the masses, and they're believing it as factual. The Bible Belt comes from Texas. They're pushing all of this stuff from Texas, and it's like, why? Majority of the books in school are being made in Texas.
Yes.
You know what I'm saying?
Yes.
The history is coming from Texas.
Yes.
Why are we not questioning it enough? Like, why are we more? Why is this now being questioned?
Is
You know
it
what I'm saying?
Pearson, if I'm not mistaken? Pearson?
Yeah.
Pearson. Okay. Yeah. And I think
sure.
why I said that if you really need to keep the statue because it's a historical figure that made some kind of pinnacle discovery, even though he was a slave owner, then make sure you mention it, that like truly give the full picture about the person and not just mention their accomplishments,
Just
because
tear them shits down
people-
all the way.
Sure.
From the up.
Sure. And like if they were taken down and destroyed, I would not be against that. So I do want to put that out there.
Here's my thing. In reference to, and going back to what Samurai and Disciple said, if history was taught truthfully and honestly, they would have never got a statue.
Exactly.
And that's the thing. Now that the truth is coming out and people are waking up, and I wouldn't even say waking up. People are just getting the truth. Let's be completely honest and across the board. There are people that know the history, going back to our dissection of it. There are the ignorant who don't know. There are the people who are willfully ignorant who know and choose to be apathetic about it. And there are people who have woken up and decided, hey, this is wrong. We need to change. There are so many better people in that time frame and period that deserve a statue, rather than these generals who get romanticized for leading a 4-year war, mind you. The war only lasted 4 years, but their lifetime shows enslavement and tyranny. So, from that, I personally believe that if we're doing something with these statues, yes, they don't need to be torn down. I live in a town that we have a building called the Market House. It was recently in the news. And what they did, it's called the Market House, but what it was is it was a slave house during the time, and they brought slaves over and they sold them. They sold people at this building. So there's a petition going on, and we're holding council meetings and things like that to tear it down or replace it or do something with it. But we don't want it, and it's reserved as a historic building. And there's so much better time and effort that could be spent in something like that. You know what I mean?
Wait, why don't people, like, I'm just asking.
No, you're good.
Why don't people just, like, renovate it and reuse the building for something else? Like, repurpose the building?
Well, it's not even so much, the building exists, and it's like, they have you could walk inside the building and go into it and look at all the history of our town and stuff like that, but it still remains that they've tried to remix it purposely. But at the same time, you have to think, if you're someone who has experienced the trauma, you have trauma going through your lineage, do you even want it repurposed, or do you want it gone?
Oh, I see. Okay.
So from my standpoint, if my ancestors even had the opportunity, or someone related to me, or someone that even looked like me had the chance to be sold, do I even want to be affiliated with something like that? Do I want to walk inside that building and think, oh, my ancestors could have been sold in this very building?
Got it.
That's not cool.
Understood.
We don't want that. You know what I'm saying? So with the same thing with the statues. Sorry. The same thing with the statues. If I'm driving past this statue every single day that said, this man fought to keep...
That's exactly what I was saying. Yes, exactly.
I don't want to see that.
Yep, don't want to see it.
So I believe that the statues need to be taken down. They should have been taken down. They never should have been erected in the first place. If the seceding people had to come back into the Union, they never should have been erected.
That's a given, man.
But from from them being taken down, they should be put in museums and on display as a shame. And as America, honestly, I'm going to say this, and this is fully my opinion. America has a lot of things that it has not been held accountable for to be in so many other people's business. I've said that on my channel, and I firmly believe it. We put where there's a big boast and a big talk of, oh, we're this sovereign country and we're so great and we want you to live the American dream. But in that dream, we have to acknowledge the nightmare that we've caused for so many others. So
facts.
Absolutely. And I think Samurai mentioned something really important. That's such a good segue for the next topic. He said that the way the historians sometimes or the people who write history make slavery, they mask slavery into this like pleasurable experience where everyone was happy being slaves and they were treated so well. I think a good indication of that is, or a good example of that is recently, a lot of you have probably heard on the news that Aunt Jemima has been changing their branding, and same with Uncle Ben's. And I will be completely honest with you guys, when I first read that, I didn't quite understand it because, and I'll tell you why, I thought Aunt Jemima was a real person. I thought she was a business owner, and I thought her picture, I thought that was freaking amazing. I was like, I would love to have a Solo Raven hot sauce. Hello? Solo Raven Cheerios, Raven cereal. So when I thought Aunt Jemima, I genuinely thought she was an auntie. Like, there was this person who, so I didn't quite understand, like, why are they taking away her logo? Like, she created this business, like, let her be. And then I started doing, again, Confederate flag. I had my own opinions, and I was like, what is going on? Why are people, like, attacking this brand? So then I was like, maybe there's some truth to it. So I started doing some digging, and I realized that's what you thought too. Kyle says that's what he thought too. Then I did some digging, and I was like, oh my goodness gracious. I want to show you guys something because I found this very interesting. If I can pull it up. Okay. Let's see if I can do this well. Please. Hopefully I did this well. So, this used to be the Aunt Jemima logo. And the two people that created this logo, or the inspiration for this logo, they got their idea from a play they were watching of a person doing blackface, and it was Jemima's Wedding Day. Now, for those of us who don't know, can you guys please educate me if you know what is blackface?
So, okay, blackface.
Painting on
Blackface,
black.
yeah, is essentially where a white person would, in a means to depict black slaves or black people in general, what they thought was the black mentality was they would take either, not black powder, but they took some kind of powdery substance or just paint or tar and put it on themselves and laugh and joke around, make big old lips and speak in a broken English. Now, slaves had a dialect. You got to think they're coming from Africa, and they have to learn a brand new language that they've never learned, which is English. So the slaves would speak in a broken English with an African dialect and different things. And to them, to their slave masters, they thought it was funny. They thought it was a joke. Okay. So they would mock them and speak in this broken dialect of what the slaves would speak and put it on stage. So it was a way for them to portray, this is a black person. This is how black people think and act. So let's just put this up here on stage and laugh about it.
Interesting. Okay. And now, for those of you who don't know, that's what blackface is. And that's why there are so many people that, I think it was Jenna Marbles, if I'm not mistaken. She's a famous YouTuber, and she recently posted a public apology for a video that she made about blackface, and I didn't know what blackface was, and now I've been educated. So thank you guys. I'm learning so much today, and I'm so grateful for you guys to be here and be so patient and kind. And this is how education should be spread. It shouldn't be a spread. Hi, little one. With you to shame others for having nap times, with being shamed for a lack of knowledge. It should be with empathy and kindness and humility. So this is where they got their inspiration from. And Aunt Jemima, the logo was inspired by this. And then the idea behind the logo was actually back in the day, people had, when they had slaves, they had these slaves, when they were the female ones, would take care of their children, and the image that they were trying to portray of this slave was someone who was extremely happy being a slave, extremely happy and obedient to their slave master, and loving taking care of their children. And if you notice, Aunt Jemima has a huge smile on her face. She is happy being a slave. She is happy servicing those slave masters. And it was this very incorrect depiction of what it is to be a slave. They completely were throwing a cover over the mistreatment, the rape, the killing, the abuse that was happening to slaves at that time. And people were happily buying this product. I even bought this product. Aunt Jemima is one of my favorite pancake mixes. I suck in the kitchen. It's the only one that doesn't burn on me. It's awesome. I had no idea that it had such a dark history. And I was talking to my brother about this the other day. I was like, how is it that the company's logo has gone from person to person to person to person, and no one has questioned the logo? You're trying to tell me you all have these board of directors, and you have people on marketing panels, and you have no one questioning. Guys, by the way,
because none of them.
Where'd that come from? And it stems from that.
Easy answer right there.
It stems from that because no one even thought that there could be. No one even cared to acknowledge that there could possibly be a racist undertone to that logo. And I just thought that was so interesting that it is only now coming to light and being changed. Same thing with Uncle Ben. Now, I didn't have a lot of information about Uncle Ben. Do either of you know things about the Uncle Ben logo. I just know Uncle Ben looks like it was like it's a black man, I think.
I mean, I know what the term an Uncle Ben means. The
Oh, I
fact
don't know what that
being
means. Oh,
called
please.
an Uncle Ben is not a good thing.
Oh, I didn't know.
Come on.
Please educate me. I
Okay,
didn't know
so being
that.
called an Uncle Ben is the equivalent of like, okay, so you think if Aunt Jemima is the mammy,
Okay.
okay, that's for
Yeah, mammy, right.
slave terminology of a mammy. You know, she took care of the master's children and stuff like that. Go see mammy, blah blah blah.
And
blah.
happily, which is why that smile was
Right,
like.
and Uncle Ben.
Oh my
Have you
God.
seen the movie Django at all?
No, I've seen 12 Years
No.
a Slave, but not Django. It's
Okay,
on my
so
list. Yeah.
Samuel L. Jackson plays a character who's essentially an Uncle Ben. He is the ringleader of the slaves, who's over the slaves, essentially the black person over the slaves, but he still answers to the master. He gets treated a little bit quote unquote better,
Okay.
because he's the one that has to control the rest of the slaves. Now, an Uncle Ben, when someone is referred to as an Uncle Ben, oh, you're just dancing for the slave master. You're just doing what the slave master tells you. You're just this. He's the male equivalent of Aunt Jemima.
Okay.
If that makes sense.
Got it. Like you kiss their butt, kind of. Type. Okay.
Pretty much.
Okay. That's really interesting. I had no idea.
He's the good boy slave.
Yes.
So for a white person, you want an Uncle Ben. And for black people, that's like a spit in the face. Like, really? Like, what? So
that is really interesting. I had no idea. And this is, mind you guys, these are brands that are in our kitchens. These are brands that we pass every day on the shelves. Who knows how many other logos out there that are out there with these like racist undertones, and they were created by people who had these very racist views. And it's kind of making me like question everything around my house now. Like now I want to look into all of these different brands that I have, and I'm trying to be more conscious about this. And for those of us who thought that Aunt Jemima was actually the creator and the business owner, we were so very wrong, very wrong. So we've talked about a few symbols of racism already. We've talked about the flags. We've talked about statues. We've talked about the Aunt Jemima and Uncle Ben's. And I also want to touch a little bit on nooses. In Toronto, which for those of you who don't know, it is also, side note, thank you so much, Suga, for that scrumptious raid. I really appreciate you sharing your community with me.
Raid from Shug.
Thank you. You know what it is. I'm going to be doing those, let me see, 13 exercise reps for you. Thank you. As a thank you for that raid. I do want to talk about nooses because Toronto is known as a very multicultural city. We live in harmony, and it's like the melting pot, like as America calls itself, but Toronto is the melting pot. There were 3 nooses found in the last month at 3 different construction sites. So 3 different nooses. This is in Toronto, which is a multicultural city where everyone supposedly gets along. The fact that this is happening in a multicultural city, it really makes you question what's happening in cities that are predominantly white or predominantly racist. There are some states more than others, we all know, or some cities more than others that are predominantly like just very ethnocentric, and they are racist. So what have you guys learned, or I guess read about nooses, and like why do you think that's a red flag? Like why do you think seeing nooses are coming around everywhere is a red flag? Samurai, do you want
used to hang black people. I think like I feel like it didn't have to go any further than that, right? Like a noose was used to kill black people. They were hanging them from their neck, like
publicly.
Yeah.
That's like saying, literally, I had a meme that was posted.
Yep.
To say, so the meme said, in reference to black people hanging themselves in trees, is to say a Jew walks into a gas chamber on purpose.
Yep.
Right.
So that's why, it's not even symbolism. That's the sinisterness of hanging a noose in a tree.
Yep.
It's not funny. It's not cute.
It's not funny.
Joke. It's and I need to recant my statement in reference to Uncle Ben. The chat reference that is Uncle Tom, but there's still a correlation with Uncle Ben and Uncle Tom.
Mhm.
Uncle Ben he was a rice grower who supplied rice in World War II. So that's where Uncle Ben's rice
Ah, okay. Uncle Ben's rice.
comes
Oh, wait, you cut
from.
out.
Yeah.
Ooh, am I?
Yeah, you're good now.
Cut
Hello,
out for like
internet?
short.
Thank you guys in chat. But yeah, you don't, that's like, imagine the most offensive way to die for somebody,
Yes.
and you put that in their face.
Mm-hmm.
So,
And the reason I wanted to get the guests to say it is that it's fine if I have that opinion, but it's different when there are people from the states themselves who have experienced these heinous acts when they explain what the symbol, what the noose is all about. Because people could be like, you're in Canada, you're from Toronto, you don't know what you're talking about. But these are people who have learned about U.S. history, done their own research, live in the states, and actually, I think, unfortunately, in your states, like in the states, people have actually gone one step further, and there have been some cases where people have been hung actually recently. Is that correct? I've seen a couple of news articles where people have been actually hung. So that goes to show you that what Shogun, I think the point that Shogun was also trying to make is that you really have to wonder, because some people are saying that, oh, it was suicide, they're playing it off as suicide, but do you actually think someone would choose to publicly hang themselves from a noose that was used to hang black people so long ago to make them into an example or whatever it is to, it just doesn't make sense. And this is how the news gets away, or the police gets away, or people get away with doing things like these and just playing it off as suicide, because the people who have the power, a lot of them are the ones who hold these very racist views. And that is why we're having this conversation. I know all cops are not bad. I know all politicians. Well, no, most. Let me just stop myself right there.
well, even to say in reference to, here's the thing, and it goes back to that whataboutism that I do want to acknowledge. So, what is whataboutism? And it's essentially a way. It's a way to derail an argument. So, whataboutism is defined as, whataboutism, and it goes on a lot nowadays. The technique or practice of responding to an accusation or difficult question, okay, by making a counter accusation or raising a different issue. This is called a straw man argument.
Yeah.
Well, what about this? The issue that we're talking about is, so right now the issue that we're talking about is black people being hung up on it. Well, what about people that get, killed from drowning?
That is sad.
Like,
that is.
It's literally like.
But it's
what?
not about that.
It's not.
It's not.
So. Oh my gosh. Black Mermaid, I love you, bite. But so we have to. It's sad that we have to go back to, we're not talking about right now. We're not talking about that right now. Yes, we understand that's important. But the issue at hand is people are being murdered.
Yes.
And people want to derail the conversation. Then you have to, it takes emotional intelligence and a little bit of, just, because there are always going to be those people that don't want to hear what you want to say and want to derail. But you have to see through, like Raven, you are the perfect example, because you genuinely want to learn and know more. Like, I love your take. I love that you open up a dialogue and that you want to learn and dissect the things that are going on and understand the things that are going on. But then you always have those people that are like, well, they're looting, but what about or they're rioting because of this, but what about the looting? It's just like,
You're missing the point, baby. You're missing the point.
People have to want to understand. They don't need to know the what, or the, they need to seek why this is going about, not what's going on.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
The people that are bringing up, but the people that are bringing up these arguments they're already the people that are already. These are the people that are already against us.
Yes.
So
for the most part,
they'd say, "Oh, well, what about this?" Like, well, we know that's an issue, but we're not talking about that. We're talking about this. And I also wanted to touch on something that Raven said when she said, "We know not all cops are bad." It's like there's the exact opposite perception when it comes to black people. It's as if
Mm-hmm.
all black people were bad, but there's some good apples, and it's the opposite for everyone else. And it's just like, well, why are we on this side, and it's all of us are bad, but cops are. We don't
Right.
get that fair
Yep.
judgment. You know what I'm saying? It's like
Right.
we're already judged as bad from birth.
Yep.
It's like, oh, they're bad, but it's like, why are you guys treating us this way?
Yep.
You know
Right.
what I'm saying?
Yep.
And to caveat off
And
that, I'm sorry, I did. Sorry, go ahead. Go ahead. My fault.
no. So I have a perception that it's from like the media. If you think of everything that you consume in the media, it's always heavily negative portrayal of black people.
Mm-hmm.
Anything that you consume is negative portrayal of black people, with the exception of some good things. But for the people that don't have this experience with people of color, they're going to believe what they see off of TV. They're going to believe what they
Come
see
on.
off of the news. They're going to believe what they hear from the media. So, in their mind, well, it's always on the news that black people are fighting, they're killing each other. So they're bad people.
Yep.
We hear this on the news all the time.
Mm.
Matter of fact, for Nixon advisor during the war on drugs, his name was John Etchelman.
Oh.
I don't know, but this is what he said. This is quoted from him. The Nixon campaign in 1968 and the Nixon White House after that had two enemies: the anti-war left and the black people. You understand what I'm saying? We know we couldn't make it illegal to be either against the war or black, but getting the public to associate hippies with marijuana and blacks with heroin, and then criminalizing both heavily, we could we could disrupt those communities. We could
Mm-hmm.
arrest their leaders, raid their homes, break up their meetings, and vilify them night after night on the evening news. Did we know we were lying about their drugs? Of course we did.
Mm-hmm.
This isn't new. This has been happening.
Yep.
You know
Come
what I'm
on.
saying? And people aren't like
Preach.
realizing, or they can't create the disconnect between what they see on the TV and what they're actually seeing as a person. If I can keep going, but it's like
Please keep going,
People's-
please.
people's perception. It's like they fight so hard, or it's either belief perseverance, or I'm sorry, confirmation bias or belief perseverance. They either don't want to know, or they don't care about what they're seeing as actual factual because they don't
Yes.
believe it's facts. It's oh well, I hear what you're saying, and that's when they bring up the data. Well, what about the black on black crime? They're
Oh
shooting each
my
other all the time.
God.
Come on.
Well,
come on.
we address
You
that
gotta
as
counter-
well. Do you know how many nonprofits are in
Come on.
Chicago to help eliminate that? But you don't hear about those.
Yeah.
You hear about, oh, black people are shooting each other, they're killing each other. Well, I mean, that's what we expect
Yeah.
because that's what you guys show on the TV of us.
Yeah.
That's it. There isn't anything better. And if it is, those people are considered, oh, well, those are the good apples.
There
So,
are exceptions. Yeah. There are
Good on them.
exceptions.
you know what I'm
And
saying?
to not even caveat, to continue what you said, and I completely agree. The fact that the TV show Cops decided to end and say, you know what, after so many years of us showing a lot of, people of color getting arrested, a little bit of white people getting arrested, but mostly people of color getting arrested, it's time for us to bring this show to an end.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's perpetrated throughout media, it's
Mhm.
perpetrated throughout, even in our own music, in TV shows, in video games, you guys.
Yep.
In video games, like, to be the black person or to be a person of color, you get looked at a certain type of way. And going back to the police officer, the good police officer, I'm not saying that I don't believe there are good police officers, but I know for a fact that the good police officers are either one, killed by other police officers,
Yes.
or set
Preach
up,
it. Preach
or they
it. Preach
are
it.
silenced. So to be a good police officer
Yes.
amongst the police is hard, if not
Dangerous.
borderline impossible.
Dangerous. Yeah.
Because you're seen out as a target. And the police, I know for a fact, the police have a code. It's cover your ass.
Yep.
They will lie on other police officers and lie for other police officers before the truth gets exposed. They will tamper with evidence and things like that. And that's why we say it's so important in reference to have a governing group. You think about it: teachers, medics, firefighters, and police. All these people, again, are pillars in a community. We need these people, but only one of them has the power to legally end somebody's life. That should be the group that is held the highest accountable, because you can't ever bring a life back. It is done. And yes, I understand that police officers are in the line of duty, but so are firefighters. they can't shoot a fire and stop a fire. You know, they literally have to run in, and they risk their life every day. Military as well. They risk their life every day defending our country and helping other countries, I would hope. So when you voluntarily put yourself in harm's way, you cannot hide behind the luxury of, oh, I feared for my life.
Yep.
Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
So going back to the good cop thing, they are fighting to say that they are good cops. Yes, I believe it. I believe there are good people with well intentions that serve, you know, in uniform. But at the same time, as soon as they speak out against their bad cops, again, they're either silenced or they're killed. And that's the issue. That goes back to this system of oppression that needs to be uprooted and taken away and fixed.
Yep.
Because that's not good.
And if you want to know what happens to a good cop that actually stands up and speaks out, just look up the story of Carrie L. Horn. Like, this was ridiculous. A Buffalo cop, female black Buffalo cop. Her partner on duty she was 1 year away from qualifying for her pension, so she would be set for life, and she was fired from her job for standing up to one of her police officers as he was administering a choke on a black man. Like he was using way excessive force. She stepped in to stop him. She ended up her own police officer partner swung on her and hit her, and she got fired. They promoted him. They promoted that officer and fired her.
Yeah. There's another case of a police officer speaking out against, I don't know if it was excessive force or he was questioning just the system, and they had sent him to a dangerous place, and they just never sent back up. They were like, yeah, backup's going to be there in like 10 minutes. They just never sent back up. It came like 2-3 hours later. So there are ways to be like, well, we did our due diligence. I don't know how this happened. And we acknowledge that there are good cops out there, but it is scary. It's dangerous, as they said, to be a good cop. And I think that it's what Yolo said, that it's not just black people. Everyone is portrayed terribly in the media. And I think the best example is Muslims. Like, I'm a Muslim, and all you see are just terrible images of extremists, people killing each other, yelling Allahu Akbar. It's almost become a meme at this point, when truly the words Allahu Akbar just means God is great. And I mean, don't Christians say that all the time? Like, what's the equivalent? Right. Hallelujah? Or I'm not quite sure. Or God is great, or God is great. Right. And there's nothing wrong in saying that, but as soon as it's said in Arabic, it's suddenly like, oh my God, I need to fear for my life. But people don't understand, right? People don't understand that it is the extremists, just like there are extremists in all kinds of other religions. But people believe what they see on the news. And if we are not taught to question what we see in media, that's all we're getting, and it's unfiltered. So like we're being taught to be fearful of people that we know nothing about, and we're taught to not know anything about them because they might kill us. Same thing with black people. Yeah.
What's crazy is you shown us or described to us how media has flipped it in a religious sense. Imagine having people in white hoods and garbs coming into your lawn and burning a cross and saying, you're going to be on that cross or in a tree behind you. Imagine. And these people are saying, oh, I serve God too.
Okay, can I say something about this? I was thinking about this, right? Okay. That's a great point on its own. One of my professors told me that terrorist is supposed to be a fluid word. It describes anyone who enacts terror. Right. However, now when you think terrorist, you immediately think a Muslim person. Besides the point, again, the people who are in charge of history and creating fear and controlling people, that's who's going to create the narrative. Besides that, what I do want to say, I truly, genuinely believe this. Anybody out there who is a devout, I don't know much about different religions, but I do know a little bit about Christianity, Judaism, and Islam. So I'm going to only talk about the Abrahamic religions. I am not excluding other religions, but I'm not going to talk about religions I know nothing about, because I don't want to come off as like with sweeping statements. Any religion that I know of out of these Abrahamic religions do not preach hate, do not preach violence of any kind. So if you are performing activities like this, going around killing people, burning people, saying that you're going to go to hell and all this. I'm sorry, do you have a telephone line with God? Is that how you know I'm going to hell? Do you have a meeting one-on-one with him every day? Like, no. So shut the fuck up, right? And believe in God, spread peace, spread goodness, spread love. That's what I think these Abrahamic religions are truly about. And at the end of the day, all of these religions believe that God is the best judge. God is the best judge. It is constantly mentioned and drilled in your brain that God is the best judge. So, can we go back to black, because religion is a whole lot. But I do want to say this, because religion has been used with like these burnings of people, these killings of people. It's been done in the name of religion when it's actually a racial thing. And there's no religion that tells you to segregate and abuse people based on your racist values and your beliefs. That's a you problem. That's not a religion problem. So I just wanted to say that out there. If they do that in the name of religion, they are not true believers, in my opinion, of that religion.
As I can only speak for myself, and I would say I identify as a Christian. I've worked at a church, things like that. I have Bible understanding. I took college courses, seminary for it. And to break it down, from a Christian standpoint, how you should treat people is with love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, and self-control.
Mm-hmm.
And literally it's summed up, because if you operate in those things, you will not treat people poorly. Mm-hmm. That's it. It's that simple.
That's exactly it.
That's how you deal with your life, in love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, and self-control. Because you can't, if you don't operate in those, or if you're operating in those, you won't treat people less than how you would want to be treated. And to go back with the statue things, now people are looking at, taking down statues of Jesus and stuff like that. It just goes back to, well, if you would have taught history correctly, just from a geological standpoint, a geographical standpoint, I would be quick to say Jesus did not have blonde hair, blue eyes, this long brunette surfer dude hair, and he probably looked more like a Middle Eastern. Mm-hmm. Let's be real. Let's look at the demographic where he came. So I think it is very important that we acknowledge religion, because look at the wars that have started because of religion and race. The Crusades. Yeah. Even then. And it's a shame.
Yep.
And so we have to, again, address our beliefs and our biases.
Yeah.
And you have to eat the meat and spit out the bones, because these are difficult, tough conversations.
They are.
We have to, and I can't force my belief on anybody, and that's not my desire. But
exactly.
I would hope you love me and respect me enough to hear what I have to say.
Absolutely.
And let me be it as I let you.
Absolutely. And the other reason I wanted to make that side comment is that I've seen various videos on Twitter that have surfaced of people, like unfortunately predominantly white people, going around calling people the N-word and saying, you are going to hell. You need to be saved. Crazy. So I'm sorry, if you were a true believing, I'm guessing they were Christian, if you were a true believing Christian, you would not be saying those terrible things. So I just wanted to make that distinction, because some people could look at that and be like, oh, look at Christianity, so bad. Oh my God. That's ignorance, because if you truly learned a little bit about Christianity, you would know that it does not preach that. So that's why I wanted to make that statement. Going back to our topic, implicit bias, which is what we touched on a little bit. Dashni, start us off, baby. What is implicit bias?
I mean, implicit bias is like known as unconsciously holding negative stereotypes or attitudes towards like specific group of people. Mm-hmm. And it's ridiculous. And it's like people sometimes don't even understand that they have implicit bias. And my favorite example is like recruiting officers or people in charge of recruitments. Like, I've had to do many interviews talking to people, and the first one was like, oh, like, wow, you're really educated, in this surprised voice. Like, why should it be so surprising that I'm educated? It doesn't, like, there should be no shock value to me having an education whatsoever.
Did you ever get the you don't have an accent?
Oh yeah,
Oh my god.
yeah.
This is
I
real
got, oh,
stuff,
you sound
guys.
educated. Like, yo, you speak really well. You have a great vocabulary. Yeah. What?
Did you
Why wouldn't I?
Oh my goodness. Wow.
Why wouldn't I have a great vocabulary? It doesn't make no sense. Like, there's this stereotype saying, oh, because I'm black and because the area I'm from, I'm supposed to just be riddled with slang and not know how to carry myself. I'm just like, no. Like, I am educated. I'm smart. I know how to speak. Even if I do mumble at times, but no, like, no, I'm not. You're not gonna see me talking this slang talk, everything. It shouldn't be that much surprise when you hear someone of color speak eloquently.
Yeah. I've actually
I
gotten
think
that
that
before too. I'm not black, but I've received the you don't have an accent, and it's so strange because then I ask them what kind of accent would you think that I would have? And then they would just say I just an accent. So it's really
Yeah, exactly.
strange
When
how
you question them back,
they're like just an accent. You just don't have an accent. So it's just a very strange automatic light that goes on in their head that oh my god, they don't have an accent. Oh my god, they're really they're educated. Oh my goodness, how did that happen? And it's this shock, which is very unfortunate, very sad, very sad. um Samurai, do you want to speak a little bit more on implicit bias?
Yeah, I was just gonna say it's not necessarily always like a negative thing. You can have an implicit bias that's like harmless as well. So you have
Yeah.
two glasses of something sitting in front of you. You're gonna reach for the one that you want. It's like an implicit bias. It's not necessarily like always negative, but the implicit biases form negative like prejudices and negative stereotypes because, like you were just saying, you speak so well. Like, why wouldn't I speak well?
Mm-hmm.
Like, why do you think I wouldn't speak well? Just because of the
Color of
media
my
that you
skin.
consume
Mm-hmm.
portrays black people as uneducated doesn't mean I'm uneducated.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? I think it's just like people generalizing too much and they're not seeing the humanity in each different person. They're just looking at it as, oh well, this guy's another black guy, and they're not seeing past that until they have to. And I think that's the sucky part because a lot of people really don't have to. You know what I'm saying? If it doesn't
Yeah.
affect them, they don't have to see it. They don't have to talk about it. But it's like,
It's important.
if you don't, then it just continues.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
In reference to, I had to walk away and step away for a moment, but even with implicit bias, I think one thing that I loved from my, what was it was African American history teacher. It was an elective in school, in high school. And it's crazy that they had to split it up into African American history. It's like it's American history. It's just the full history. You know what I mean? The full history of it all. But the teacher, I still remember it to this day. His name was Mr. McDonald, and he started off the class saying, "I'm going to be prejudiced. Like I'm going to talk to you guys, and I'm going to speak to you in uh, I'm going to be speaking out of my prejudice towards you guys. This is a black man." And
Interesting.
what he was trying to say was he cannot, if we're being real and if we're being frank and if we're being honest, we all have innate bias and prejudice in our mind
Yeah.
that are set up, that we have been taught or that we learned throughout, however long we live, that if we don't consciously like purge those things, they will be spoken and they will be said. You know? So we need to be aware of those prejudice or bias, and we need to change our pattern, if you will, in acknowledging those things. Because again, like I said earlier, there's prejudice and there's bias and there's racial stuff in video games that gets said or that gets projected that maybe the game designer didn't even mean for it to be, prejudice, but it's still there.
Mm-hmm.
Or you can watch the Avengers. You can watch the movies, and what's one thing that the Avengers always have? The main lead Avenger. There's a black sidekick or character that's there, and you're like, wait a minute, whoa, wait, like what is his buddy, And it's like, why is that? So again, for when you think about when Black Panther came out and why it was so big and why it was so popular, you think, oh wait, we're the main focus. You know, so in reference to the bias and those they're rooted deeply in, I know, American culture. I lived here all my life for American culture, and when it's acknowledged and when it's addressed, we have to address it, I guess. Uh, like we have to address it like this is why it's rude or this is why it's biased and you shouldn't do it.
Exactly.
But at the same time, people have to be willing to realize, oh dang, I'm wrong.
Acknowledge it, yeah, and
seriously,
and reflect on it. Yeah.
But that's the problem, though.
They don't want to change.
Don't want to be wrong.
Yeah.
Like, they don't want to be wrong because if they're wrong, then it's like inherently bad. But it's like people experience things. You learn, you grow. You're gonna be wrong. We're not perfect. We're not always gonna be right. You're gonna slip up sometimes, but acknowledge that you slip up and improve so it doesn't happen again. But people have defense mechanisms and it's like, oh no, that's not true. I'm not like that. Not at all. You're confused. You're wrong. Like, no. Like, let's have a decent civil conversation.
How do we, when someone is wrong, because this is something that's going on in Twitch, even this is a random question. Sorry. I know we didn't think about this topic beforehand, but in reference with racial bias or just, you know, let's say a streamer gets called out for the racial stuff that we do. How do we handle that? They're called out. They are like, you did this and this is wrong. How do we, as, you know, people of color and as the Twitch community, and even to the world, how should we handle that? How should we grow from that? Should we forgive them and let them in? How does that look? Am I making sense?
So you're making sense, and I think each person is going to be different. My school of thought is people mature, people grow. They're going to make mistakes.
Right.
So I would be willing to forgive someone that did that if they truly understood what they did was wrong and not just like, oh wow,
right,
that was wrong what I did, I'm sorry, but not actually being sorry for it, being sorry that they got the reaction that they got.
Exactly.
There's a difference between being sorry for getting a reaction and being sorry for actually doing
like
an
I'm sorry
action.
I got caught, or I'm sorry.
Yeah, exactly. If you're sorry that you did this and you know why what you did was wrong, then I can forgive you. And I can't say everyone has to forgive you, but I know I can. But there's people that want to pretend like, oh yeah, I'm sorry that I got this reaction. Like, well, if you're a little bit more smarter, if you thought like a little harder about it, you could have seen like, oh, okay, this might not have been good. I'm so sorry.
No, you're fine.
I was gonna stop there anyways.
No, you're good.
No, thank you guys for that. Do you want to relate that to privilege? Because I think we can't talk about implicit bias and racism and systemic racism without talking about privilege. So what is privilege?
I like Jane Elliott's definition of privilege, and she has a video. If you guys have not seen it, you guys need to go to YouTube and check out Brown Eyes, Blue Eyes. I think that's what it's incredible.
I love that video. Was
It's
that the one
amazing.
back in the day at school teacher?
That was when she taught a class.
Tell
it was an
them,
elective
love
class,
it.
and she pretty much sat all people down, different races and backgrounds. She had, like, you know, black people, she had white people, she had a little bit of everybody in that class. And for, I think it was a couple hours, she taught them, and she put them under a system of oppression in that class. And one of her references, or one of the things she said was, one of the girls were crying. It was a white girl. She was crying. She was upset. She was like, I can't handle this. And she walked out. She said, you have the opportunity when you're facing a difficulty, you could just walk out and leave and come back whenever you're ready. Black people can't do that. You have the privilege that you could walk out and just say, I'm done with this. I can't handle this. This is too hard.
It's too much.
It's just too much.
It's
And you
too
can just
much.
Walk out and leave and come back whenever you're ready, or just change.
Yeah.
That's privilege.
That is
That is a
privilege.
Yeah.
privilege. That's one example of privilege.
Yeah.
And she was like, you can do that, but he can't do that. And that was like, dang. Ooh.
We don't have the ability to say, okay,
A
I
get
don't want to deal
out
with racism or
card, yeah.
discrimination. We don't have that. Being privileged is having that, like, oh, I don't see racism, I don't see discrimination. Well, you're privileged because you don't experience
You don't
that.
experience
You're not
it.
treated any differently because of your skin color. But the fact of the matter is, other people are. You're privileged because you don't have to experience that. And there's nothing wrong with that. And you have to acknowledge that and say, okay, I'm in a position where I don't experience something that you experience. So I'm not going to say, oh, well, you're trying to say I'm something else. I'm going to bat as hard as I can so you don't have to experience that either. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's
And the
just
thing
defense
about it is,
mechanisms, man.
having privilege isn't the problem. It's refusing to acknowledge that you have that privilege
Right.
or using
Because
it correctly.
And
yeah,
and
'cause
by
you don't have
having
to
that
account it.
privilege, other people are not treated equally.
Right.
Like that's the problem. It's not a problem if you just have the privilege and you're going about your day. It's also not acknowledging it, and by you having that privilege, there are people who are now under privileged or like have no privilege at all.
Right.
That's the issue. And I do want to take this time to also mention there are a lot of people that are not, or possibly I guess don't consider themselves white because they're from Europe. There are some places in Europe like they're either Polish or they're from Bulgaria or whatever it is. And I've heard a lot of people say, well, I've never been given special treatment. Like I don't think I'm considered white. I'm European. I think what needs to be mentioned is that when you look down at your skin, people are not going to be like, that's a shade too dark to be white. You're white. If you're from
People are
Europe,
not gonna say,
you're white.
"Ooh, this is French skin."
You're white.
You're not gonna be judged. for
Right.
your
You're
color.
not going to be judged based on like how much white you are. If you're white, you're white. If you're light skinned, you're white. If you're dark skinned, you're either black or brown. And if you're a little lighter, but your features look a little different, and you're from an Asian country, you're Asian. Or you're, I'm not. I guess I don't think yellow is the right
people's
terminology,
first
but
take-
I'm just saying like
Yeah, people's first take of you is always going to be the external.
Is
they're going
external,
to, again,
yes.
going back to those cultural biases and those what was it called? They're going to relate, oh, well, I should interact with you like this because you look like this.
yes.
It's like, no, that's not right. And going back to privilege, another example would be, okay, so me, Raven, you and I are playing an online game, and they hear your voice, they're like, oh, well, she's a girl. So right there, people already think, oh, well, I'm going to treat her different because she's a girl. There's male privilege in gaming. There's male privilege in a lot of things, and we have to address our privileges to say, you know what, you're not going to treat this person differently because they're not this. And it's sad. It's sad that we're having this discussion now that people are starting to realize, oh, well, there's white privilege, there's male privilege, there's a lot of different privileges that need to be discussed and that need to be addressed because across the board, people aren't treated fairly in general.
Exactly, and that's why it's important to mention privilege and to also mention that just because you don't experience it doesn't mean it doesn't exist. And just because you might not consider yourself white, if your skin color is white, you're white. You're considered white. And it's important to acknowledge that and not fight that, because you don't have to acknowledge that you're white, but you have to acknowledge that you're going to be seen as white and treated as white and then be given that privilege as being white. I'm just catching up on... sorry?
I don't... Oh, no, he was saying that's perfect. I don't think white privilege is necessarily a bad thing. I wouldn't say, oh, your privilege is bad. I wouldn't say that. But to be apathetic and to choose to say, well, I'm just going to be comfortable and no one's bothering me and I'm not experiencing racism and don't come into my bubble. When you actively allow other people to be treated badly while you you have the luxury of being treated fairly or being treated better, that's when your privilege is used poorly.
Exactly.
I'm just catching up on chat, and I see something about The Last of Us 2, and I don't quite understand what's going on. So someone's...
No spoilers!
Yeah, no spoilers.
I think someone posted a spoiler in that.
How dare you!
Okay, yeah, I have not played Last of Us 1, and I have not played Last of Us 2, so please no spoilers. If there are any in chat, please get rid of them, because I have no idea what's going on. Like, I'm reading it, and I don't see what's going on. Elijah McClain, I don't know who that is. They could have made Isaac on... Oh, okay, I see.
Yeah, Elijah's the kid that was living in Colorado, high schooler. He was wearing a mask, and the police approached him because they thought he was doing something suspicious. They
I remember this one.
put him down and they injected him with ketamine and ended up killing him. But it's like, so touching on that, in Oregon, there's Oregon City, they're not requiring black people or people of color to wear a mask just because of that issue with Elijah. Or I can't say just because of that issue with Elijah, but it seems like it's a coincidence that they're saying you don't have to wear a mask if you're. So Oregon's racist. If you wear a mask, they're gonna assume that guy's doing something wrong. So I see it as like okay, you don't have to do this, but at the same time, it's like a double-edged sword. You're not saying black people have to wear the mask, but white people do, and that creates like a disconnect with the white people because it's like, well, why don't they have to wear the mask, but we do, and it just creates more rift and disconnect between the two.
They would rather people not wear masks than acknowledge that the police fucked up.
Yeah,
That's
pretty much
the main thing. Like, you would rather change, and again, it goes back to the whole we want the police to be held accountable. Well, we're gonna change Aunt Jemima and this, that, and the third.
Mm-hmm.
We want police to be held accountable. We're gonna stop we're gonna let black people voice black characters. We want police to be held accountable. We're going to, march and protest with you guys. People are not getting the point of what we want. They're giving us all this extra fluff, and it's like, we just want police to be held accountable. Well, the police are like, we killed a black person unjustly. Yeah, but now you don't have to wear masks so we don't make that same mistake.
Yeah, we're getting a lot of BS that no one asked for. Like, just the other day, I think TMZ posted, Texas realtors are no longer using the term master to describe bedroom and bathrooms. And I'm just like, who asked for that? How does that help the cause at all? If it's a master bathroom, it's a master bathroom. If it's a master bedroom, it's a master bedroom. This is a specific reason why those terms. Like, no one's asking for you to start removing those terms.
Right.
Like, no one's asking for that. Like, stop giving us all this little stuff to detract from the main point. And it's sad in the terms of with Elijah, is like he was wearing a ski mask. I was reading an article, he was wearing a ski mask because he was anemic and he would get cold. Yeah. And he was listening to music at the time, and the cops got a call for a suspicious person who was wearing a ski mask, waving their arm. It wasn't even like a report of a crime or anything, but the cops were called because he looked suspicious. He was wearing a ski mask and waving his arms. That was the description given. And it's sad. Like, I've watched this video like 10 different times, and it breaks my heart every single time. Like, he's trying to talk to the cops, how he's an introvert, asking them to respect his space. Yeah. And they're, from the beginning, they immediately run up on him or start touching him, and it is just one of the saddest things that could have easily been avoided. And I'm not sure if this is correct. I read a couple articles. They said they injected 500 milligrams of ketamine.
Which is too much for a human being.
Yeah, that's way too high. It's ridiculous. And he had, I think it read, he had 2 heart attacks on the way to the hospital. He was brain dead. And it was like, this is like, all of this could have been avoided. That did not need to happen. That situation did not need to happen. And it is ridiculous that it even got to that point.
And it goes to show, going back to how police handle black people as opposed to how they handle a white person, or I would say people of color as opposed to how they handle a white person, because it's not to de-escalate, it's not to get information, it's not to to gather information, things like that, but it's immediately to either arrest and detain or to kill. And that should not be the case, because they didn't know who he was. If he was out there wearing a ski mask, a ski mask, all right, well, is he threatening anyone's life? Is he causing damage to anything? No. Then you need to use common sense. Gather information from what you see. And they didn't need to, wrestle him to the ground, inject him with A, B, C, or D. They should have, if they're going to question anyone, they need to ask questions and then handle the situation accordingly. And with police training, and I guess we caveat into that.
Yep.
The police, I don't even want to say the police aren't properly trained, because a human being can have a more civil conversation than some of the conversations and dialogues that the police happen to have. It's not so much even about training to me, but for the sake of the argument, I don't think that the police are trained well and given the proper protocol, or they don't follow the proper protocol, let alone executing it. Because you think military, they have protocol. There are rules to engagement in war, and killing someone is the absolute last thing. They're supposed to fire warning shots. They gather information, fire warning shots if they need to, if it escalates that much.
Yes.
Their whole protocol and their whole thing is de-escalate, and you take killing shots if you absolutely need.
Yes.
The police, not so much. They go in saying, oh, shoot first, ask questions later. So, in reference to Elijah and many, many others.
Many others, unfortunately.
So many others.
Yeah.
It's sad that we have to say things like defund the police because you're abusing your toys, essentially, because you just want to use them on people.
My question also is, what is the purpose for those sophisticated toys? Like, some of their toys are, the gear is so sophisticated and at military grade level, which, what? Are you fighting a war or are you trying to apprehend people?
Right.
Some unarmed.
Use that stuff unless it was orchestrated for you to use it. Like, you got a whole military-looking tank.
That's what I'm saying. Like, riding it down streets?
I'm pretty sure I saw that in Halo. Like, what?
Yes.
Nonsense. I read an article where the budget for police spending in the country was $116 billion.
Oh my God.
Police budgets get increased every year, while budgets for education and healthcare and mental illness decreases.
Yes.
And it's so ridiculous. And like literally just a couple of weeks ago, my city and a bunch of neighboring cities cut funding for education, so a bunch of teachers got laid off, and they cut basically all the arts programs, like art, gym, some health teachers got cut off, and which is sad because like you can't just force all kids to be a STEM kid. Not everybody is a STEM kid, and trying to force that is going to produce worse results. And sorry for anybody who doesn't know what STEM is. I think it's like science, technology.
Yeah, engineering, mathematics. Yeah.
Science, technology, engineering, mathematics. Like, not everybody is that type of kid. Some people rely on the arts to get through, and like taking away the arts, which is like the most creative mind from people, is not going to yield good results down the road. And it's sad, but for some reason we can keep increasing the police budget year after year, every time, even with all their failures. It's mind-boggling.
Yeah. I'm just catching up on chat a little bit. So we were just talking about the people mentioning that they're European and they're not white. So Ninja says European is white. Do you know how big of a Pakistani population Norway has? They are not white, but as Norwegian people, they're still European. Right, but we were focusing on the color of your skin because I think, as Deathmage mentioned, if the cops pull you over, you're going to be written as white, not European, white. There are white people born and raised in Africa, move somewhere else, but they are only white, not African. Right, again, color of your skin. That sounds closed-minded. It's not closed-minded. It's how the world is working. It's upon first glance. Like, when I look at Shogun, and if I'm looking at just his exterior, he's a black man. Dashni, right. Black man. I'm brown-skinned person. Samurai, black man. And that's not racist in itself. It's, again, with those implicit biases. And then when you start treating people differently, where discrimination comes into play. So those are two different things, which we need to be careful about.
Go ahead.
I was gonna, in that show we talked about before, it's how police react differently when they just notice the first thing, the color of skin. Like, this happened back in 2017, and this whole entire story is filled with implicit bias and white privilege. Back in 2017, a white girl, a 16-year-old white girl, her name was Eliza Wozni. She walks into Walmart, steals a machete and a knife, and completely just walks out. Nobody questions her at all. They have it on videotape. Nobody stopped her one bit. She goes and grabs a machete and a knife, calls an Uber, ends up stabbing her her Uber driver multiple times. He ends up dying, and when the police find her, like while the police are going after her, she still has the machete and the knife, all bloody in her hands, and straight up they tase her, like they shoot her with a taser and bring her in. I've seen unarmed black people done far less, murdered in cold blood with less. And it's just amazing how the police were calm enough to take this girl who straight up murdered somebody and stabbed somebody, had the weapons in their hands, and they could walk away with and they were comfortable enough to just tase her. Yet when it comes to an unarmed black man, so much excessive force gets used, and they end up losing their life. Like even in the case of Elijah McCain, if you watch the video, one of the officers is saying, I don't know what this kid is on, but he was super strong. Elijah wasn't on anything. And he weighed like 140? And you telling me those 3 cops had trouble?
Yeah, don't even.
No,
don't even.
No, stop. Miss me with all that.
Yeah.
The thing is, like, we're conditioned to view black people as a threat. You know what I'm saying? That's why, this is my assumption of why there's so many shootings in Chicago. You're growing up in a war area, you're being told every day that the black dude around the corner has a gun that's going to shoot you.
Yes.
You're going to do everything in your power to protect yourself.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So when the cops, like, we're all getting the same information. When the cops are getting the same information, the black people are a threat. So the best thing that they can do is to eliminate the threat.
Exactly.
We need to stop being viewed as a threat.
Exactly.
Like, see people for the humanity. I don't understand. Like, I do understand it because it's like a racist system.
But it
this was
still
never
is
built for
mind-boggling.
us. You know what I'm saying? America wasn't built for black people. It was built by black people for white people. And every law policy that was made after that was, oh, you guys are second-class citizens. You don't need this. Red line laws, lash laws in Oregon. It's like black people have never been given the same equal treatment as anyone else. And we've always been viewed as a threat. And the first thing that you're going to do when you encounter a threat, you're going to try to eliminate it. Eliminate you.
Eliminate it, yep. Zilla says, it's also sad because the European police are beaten every day. It is also sad that my country's police stations does not have enough bulletproof vests for every agent. It is also sad that my police is called to troubled neighborhoods just to get thrown rocks. It is very sad every day videos people are fighting with police because they know police won't fight back. Believe you don't want your police defunded. So there is a very different I think there's a difference between European police, I guess, from the sounds of it, and American police, Zilla. That's why your scenario doesn't apply to US police, because think about it. They're getting what was it? $16 million a year or something, guys?
116 billion. That was the budget.
I'm sorry. Never mind. I was totally off. $160 billion. So Zilla, there is no need for that much money to be poured into. Oh no! Hopefully he comes back.
No, he said his screen was black, so he thinks
okay. Awesome. There is no need for that much to be poured in, and I think there are better uses of that much money to be spread around everywhere else, except other than being poured there. If you are judged by the color of your skin, then saying European is white is closed-minded only strengthens my point, because you are classified as black or white no matter if you are European. I'm not quite sure what that means, but the example I was giving is there are people who say, I am not given the privilege that you keep talking about that white people are being given because I'm European. I have heard people say that. But what I was explaining is that when people look at you and you are European and your color of your skin is white, you are seen as white. And by that token, you are given white privilege. That is the argument that I was making, or the statement that I was saying. Ninja.
We're not saying all Europeans are white. We're saying that white Europeans are viewed as white people.
Exactly.
If there's no color in your skin, you're viewed as white.
Exactly.
I think they're agreeing. They're just saying that people thinking like that is close-minded.
Oh, 100%. 100% it is.
I mean, I think if you're going to oppress someone based off of the color,
that's what I mean. It's 100%. Yeah, that's where I'm going with the 100%.
I think it's, to me, listen, I love the black I have. I
Mhm.
love the complexion of Solo Raven. I love my white friends. I think we need to acknowledge our differences and address our differences because that way we become the America that how America's supposed to be. This in other countries as well. We become a beautiful melting pot
Yep.
of people.
Exactly.
We need to be able to address our culture and again address our differences in the way we look. But at the same time, you ain't about to press me based off of something I can't change. You know what
Tell
I'm saying? Like
me
you
exactly.
you're not. It's just not gonna
It's not
happen.
gonna happen.
So I think sorry, I got really loud and passionate. But and I think that's what we need to get at. We need to be able to say, you know what? I think you're beautiful, despite popular belief of if they think, you know, being fair skin or lighter is pretty. I think you need to love yourself and people need to be able to love other people, not just off of how they look, but because of who they are.
Mhm.
And if people get so hung up on, oh well, your skin is this complexion, that is a problem.
Yep, I agreed. And Zakia was making the differentiation between nationality, ethnicity, and race. She was saying, I'm sorry, I think you're a she. If you're not, I'm very sorry. They were saying nationality is the country you're a citizen of. Ethnicity is your family genetic makeup. Race is based on stereotypical physical characteristics based on the areas of your genetic makeup. Thank you. Thank you for that, Zakia. Deathmage says, America laws were built by white males for white males. Every other race and even white women have had to fight for their rights in this country. Ain't that the truth? Black Mermaid says, defund police and provide hospital with... I saw that. I know what you're talking about, and I saw them wearing paper bags. It's ridiculous, or like plastic bags. Ridiculous. Zilla says, and
Nonsense.
when nonsense, and when
Right.
people gets treated that bad, good people, majority who support police, start voting extreme right politicians, and with that comes a rise of the racist extremists to power, and you get 1930s all over again. Interesting. Okay.
I mean, well, with
I think
that
it's more.
comment, we were shown the character of the political climate when they were running. And people said, look, this man is saying racist, bigoted things. And people did not care. People ignored it. People said, well, he's saying what needs to be said. Is he really? Because you're showing your heart. You're showing who you really are. So you have to be careful when you say that. You have to be very careful because you can pull at receipts. There are a lot of receipts that people said from Twitter to interviews and things like that. He's shown us who he was from the get-go. So
Yeah.
it's just those people who fall in line with that, who are comfortable with that verbiage, who are comfortable with that kind of thinking. So
Honestly, I'm just, I'm not going to go too much into politics because I don't like
Right.
politics, but it does surprise me the things that certain people can get away with just because they're in a position of power. That's all I'm going to say. And I'm going to drop it at that.
Yeah.
Ninja says, I have said this before. I'll be the first person to admit that white people have the shittiest track record through history when it comes to victimizing other races and people in general. But I have some reasons why I don't stand all behind the Black Lives Matter movement. I am not against it, but I can't be all pro for it. And that is your opinion, Ninja. That is totally up to you.
So-
Even after these discussions, if you still feel that way, that is your opinion.
So, I guess I want to address Ninja. So you're saying you don't stand behind the Black Lives Matter movement. Do you understand that the Black Lives Matter movement addresses police brutality, or are you operating off of a different assumption of the Black Lives Matter movement? And we can carry on.
Yeah.
I can address the messages.
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Oh no, I was just saying, even you don't have to stand with the Black Lives Matter movement, but this movement only exists because people were treating black people poor. So you don't have to say, oh, I agree with everything that the Black Lives Matter movement stands for and what they're doing and what they're saying and who they have in it and who's a part of it and the celebrities that are buying it. And I'm not saying you need to agree with that, but if you cannot come to the common premise of people are being murdered by those who are sworn to protect them, if you can't come to that dichotomy or just that critical point,
Yeah.
then you've missed.
Which
You
is
don't have to be
what I've been saying
Black
from the
Lives Matter.
get-go. Right.
Yeah, you don't have to be like that. But if you're someone who says, if you solemnly say and believe in your heart that all lives matter, you should be out there marching and protesting just as much as someone from Black Lives Matter. That's it.
Zakia mentions European is both an ethnicity and a nationality. If you're brown and European, you are viewed as non-white, not ethnically European, but you are placed in a race category of your ethnic group, which is white. He just retweeted a man yelling white power. We're not going to get into that, but yes, I don't want to make this a political stream, but we all know what is right and what is wrong, what is acceptable and what is unacceptable. We are not children. We are old enough to make our own decisions, and it's just very shocking, some of the decisions that adults choose to be in support of. As I said previously on Discord, the last Black Lives Matter stream, I support what they stand for, but not the way that they act and when they act. And that is completely fine because I do understand that there's some people in the name of Black Lives Matter who are doing riots, and you don't have to support that. I don't support that. I understand it, but I don't support that. So I understand if you support the basis of what Black Lives Matter is about, but just not the way people are going about it. Because some people think Black Lives Matter, want to kill people, burn stuff, and that's not true. I honestly think those people are actually taking away from the movement, because the news is just going to focus on those riots, the killing, all of that, and it's going to take away from those peaceful, beautiful protests that are happening everywhere, where songs are being sung, discussions are happening, speeches are being done, awareness is being spread, beautiful signs are being made, and people are peacefully protesting. They're not getting the coverage that they need because of these riots. So although I understand it, I don't think that they're going about it the right way. It's a difference between the movement and the organization. Mm-hmm.
I also got to argue, you have to think, what's happened is this has become something decentralized. So these are strategic terms. Something centralized can be focused and examined and looked at every single microcosm of the organization. You could look at Target and you can go to the different departments of Target and see how they operate. With a movement, it is decentralized. You can't look at every single, well, this is our protest department, this is our looting department, this is our speaking out against injustice department. There is nothing. It's literally grassroots. Yep. So with that, you have people who want to take advantage of the chaos that say, under the name of Black Lives Matter, I'm gonna loot something, and I'm gonna put on a little, I'm gonna put on
bandana, whatever,
and they can literally be wolves in sheep's clothing.
Yes.
If you think about it that way. And it's the same thing with the police. You say there's good police and there's bad police. Well, there's good protesters and there's bad protesters.
That's what I'm saying.
And it's just like, again, this whataboutism. We have to get out of that mentality. Yeah. We have to know why it's happening. And we don't have to come to agreement of, well, I don't think they should be rioting or looting. People didn't think Colin Kaepernick should have knelt down when he was protesting when he was protesting police brutality during the national anthem. People disagreed with that protest. It's not
they don't want us to protest.
Right. It's not so much whether you agree or not about the protest. Why is he protesting?
Exactly.
Is the question they should be asking.
Exactly. And the reason I wanted to make a point about the rioters is because a lot of people bring that up, and they're just like, well, if you're going to support Black Lives Matter, that means you support the rioters. And it's like, no, there are two separate things. There's protests and there's riots. Protests can turn into riots, but not all protests are riots. There's a difference. And like Shogun said, we have seen multiple clips of people who are part of the protest that turns into a riot, and they're not even actually part of the protest. These are people that are just coming from their homes and looting stuff. Not all black, by the way. So people are saying, people are using all kinds of names to describe the people who are doing the looting, and they're not predominantly black. Like they're everyone. They're people of all races. So those are things that we cannot sweep under the rug either. We do have to be cognizant of that, and accept that and acknowledge that. So Black Mermaid says, during the riots, it was non-black people burning shit. Exactly. The only thing Trump did during this admin was unveil closet racist people. Ooh.
That's the truth.
Yeah.
But addressing the riots with Black Lives Matter, people are so quick to condemn the riots, but when sports teams win, like the Super Bowl, or hockey teams win their cup, there's riots, and then there's nothing said about them.
Yeah.
But when black people riot for cause, there's like, oh well, there they are, those thugs again.
Yeah.
It's like. But when white people do it, it's just like, looked over.
Oh,
Like, oh
look
yeah,
at them.
they're celebrating their team.
Yeah.
Let them be American.
Mm-hmm.
It's,
And you
it's
get
just
news coverage for a
hypocrisy.
day and then it's
There's
put
not
away.
the same treatment.
Well, it's
They're hypocrites.
it's the same thing as if a person of color does a crime, and we're never given the mental health card, never. But when a white
Ever.
person does it, they're given the mental health card. And if there's anyone that argues with that, I am truly sorry that you are unable to see that this is an ongoing thing. How many shooters have been out there that go out and shoot people and they pass the
Mental
verdict
health
of like he was suffering from mental health issues? Can I not have mental health issues? Can they not have mental health issues? Are we exempt from mental health issues? Are we always
Columbine, Aurora, Dylan Roof.
go off?
How many times are we gonna let this happen?
Right?
Are we just blaming on mental health?
And
Have you
mental
ever-
health is not a joke. I'm not saying it's a joke, but what I'm saying is
Yeah.
that call it for what it is. Call it for what it is. And that's
I
what
haven't
we're
seen a
angry
single black
about.
person being able to use that defense for mass murder.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Zilla says, I also want to add something to the theme. I also think that the racist is kept on the system on purpose because it gives politicians money and votes. It gives non-governmental organizations money and power, among other things. And Ninja, I think he's answering your question. I'm not saying I don't agree with what they are standing for. My opinion is that the Black Lives Matter is fighting for black people being victimized by police. They are not fighting for all people being victimized. By fighting for the 99% that need it the most, the 1% are not being fought for because they are not the ones who need it the most. They become the new 99%, and we're going to have to keep fighting the same fight for them after.
I think with
It's
that
not.
you missed the point.
So
Yeah.
yeah. So I want to address that. It's police brutality doesn't. If there's police reform, it's not just going to be like, oh well, Black Lives Matter made the police reform, so it's only going to benefit black people.
Right.
It's going to benefit anyone that is experienced or will experience police brutality. Black Lives Matter because Black Lives Matter. When black people are killed by the police, there's nothing done. When white people are killed by the police, there's charges brought forth. If you don't see that, like, it's like, well, then what's the problem? Like, it's obvious that all lives matter. That's why we're saying police reform. Stop police brutality. We're not saying only Black Lives Matter, but black people, when they get killed by police, nothing happens.
Yeah.
At all. And if something does happen, they're made the victim. Like, oh well, he should not have been resisting. Oh well, he should have just listened to what the police were telling him and complied.
Yeah.
Or maybe you should have treated him like a white person, and we wouldn't be in this position.
Yeah. There are actually
Stuff
laws.
doesn't happen.
Sorry, go for it.
I was saying stuff doesn't happen. If anything happens, it happens months after. Like Ahmaud Arbery, we didn't find out until
Right.
months after. Breonna Taylor, even
Breonna
Elijah McClain,
Taylor. No,
Elijah
y'all, you got to
McClain
talk about
happened
Breonna
last
Taylor.
year.
You have to talk about Breonna Taylor. Her police report: no injuries on site.
Yeah, the police listed no injury on Breonna
No.
Taylor's incident report.
No.
No, and the only reason why those guys are still walking dead because there was no video recorded,
Yep.
and it's said that we got to the point that we now have to police the police in order for action to be done.
Yeah.
And here's
And even when we do that, the video recording gets released how long afterwards?
it's not so much with Black Lives Matter. Black people are saying, oh well, we want revenge, and it sounds like, from, again, correct me if I'm wrong, Ninja, long down the line, police reform, and now Black Lives Matter gets what they want, and then we flip the script. No, for myself, as a black man in America, I don't want revenge.
Mhm.
That's not my MO. I don't have so much hate in my heart for someone who's a police officer or someone who is even a bigoted racist. I don't have that much hate in my heart to want to see them die or want to see them hurt. I want justice. I want people who are supposed to be held accountable. And that's what the Black Lives Matter movement is about. In reference to Black Lives Matter being only for black people, that's a lie. Because even when we say, Black Lives Matter, black health matters, black money matters, when you see those posts and things like that, we're not saying only our things matter, and that's all we care about. But what's funny is black people are often the gatekeeper or the first person at the door before a whole bunch of other injustice happens. Because if they're doing it to black people, they're going to do it to Asian people, they're going to do it to Latino people, they're going to do it to anybody they can oppress and treat poorly that do not look like them.
Well, they do it to people like us, like that look like me, brown skin people in
Exactly.
Toronto.
They
It
do
happens
it to
all the time.
LGBTQ people.
Yep.
And honestly, what they're afraid of is when all of us get our asses together and say, you know what, y'all have done fucked up and enough is enough. When all of us group up together and say, no, this is wrong and this is unjust, and we demand justice, that's when it's going to be a problem.
Yeah.
But this movement is kind of spearheading something. It's spearheading a direction in which the country is going that has necessarily needed to go. And again, I want to just say, it's not, when we say Black Lives Matter, we're not excluding anyone.
Black lives only matters.
We're not,
It's not
we're
that.
not saying that. We're saying because we have been your focus, well, let's put it in your face.
Yeah.
We matter. Our lives matter. And we're telling you, by killing us, that you're not treating us as such.
Yeah. And Ninja, I know you mentioned that you have specified before on Discord that you are part of the 1% group in a different subject, where I actually you're at a huge disadvantage because of being a man. But again, that's not what we're talking about. We're talking, and that's not necessarily police brutality unless you were like beaten and, you know, harmed because of that. We're talking specifically about these cases that are like being splashed all over the news of black people constantly being wrongfully apprehended and then killed for no reason, or if there is a reason, it's not that serious. And that's the main reason for this. There are actually laws in place, going back to what we were talking about, that protect police officers and ensure that they don't get apprehended the way that we would if we did murder. So there are laws that shield people from police from consequences and gives them special rights when they're defending themselves, and often trains them to fear the communities they're supposed to protect, like the black people, for example. And this is actually information that I received from a video called The Broken Policing System. It was a part of the Patriot Act series on Netflix with Hassan Minhaj. I would highly recommend that you guys watch it. It's like 20 minutes or something, but it's so good if you want more information about police brutality, police training, and laws that are in place to protect police officers. So it turns out it's very hard to sue a cop, and every cop is protected under a legal concept called qualified immunity. So in order to sue a cop, when they violate your rights, that act of violation has to have gone through the court system and been successfully prosecuted in order for that to be used as a defense. So it's like a loop, and he explained it so well. He said it's kind of like when you're trying to get a job. You can't get a job because you need experience, but you need that job to get the experience. And it's like a loop. That's why you don't get a job. And in this way, it's the same thing. That's why you don't get to sue a cop. For suing, you need to prove that someone violated your rights. But when you sue a cop, you have to prove that they violated your right and it was clearly established. But a right isn't clearly established until someone successfully sues a cop for violating it.
Exactly.
So it's
and that's
just
why
a circle.
That's why the whole qualified immunity is straight up.
It's so
BS.
bad.
And the thing about it is, like, the right to even sue a cop came about through the Civil Rights Act of 1871 that allowed Americans to start suing cops so they can be held responsible. And it's just nonsense. Like before, like when the Supreme Court even came up with the idea of qualified immunity, it was supposed to be just a way of protecting cops from just like insubstantial claims of like the damages, like ridiculous claims that either like couldn't be proven or was just like in order to like for the cops to even apply it, like it was the understanding was the cop acting in good faith, and they believe that their actions was justifiable under the law. So but then later on they changed it to what we have now. Where, it needs to be proven, like you have to actually prove that the that your rights were established, and the only way to clearly establish that is by making sure that it was there was a
successful suing,
another case, not even just another case, that another case with the specific outcome in the specific action, like the conduct of the cop had to be exactly
the same. Exactly.
And the circumstances had to be almost exactly the same as the one you're trying to sue for, or else it's going to be dismissed. And the only time I know of that the qualified immunity didn't hold up was at the case of Hope versus Peltzer. And if you don't know Hope versus Peltzer, you should look it up. It's a terrible, awful case. These officers handcuffed the prisoner called Larry Hope to a hitching post. And so they had him handcuffed to a hitching post where your arms are held up for hours on end. They held them up there on a hitching post for 7 hours. During that 7 hour time period, he was only fed water once or twice. And during one of those times, the officer had the dogs lick the water first. And while he was going to give it to Larry, he spilled the water on the ground. So he literally only got the water once during those times. And that's the only time I know. And so Hope sued the officers involved, and the 11th Circuit, even though they agreed that his conditions violated his
Right to
Eighth
live?
Amendment rights. Yeah, even though like they were saying the 11th Circuit agreed that those conditions were violated his Eighth Amendment rights, they still try to say, oh, qualified immunity was they still applied qualified immunity because there wasn't a case like Larry's before. But then it went to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court was like, nah, qualified immunity is not applying here because anyone can see those conditions were far
The
egregious,
one time.
far beyond the. And the fact that that's the bar,
Yeah.
that's the bar that's set for qualified immunity to not imply is straight up ridiculous. And this is the reason why so many officers get away with
Go
stuff
off,
and are not
yeah.
held accountable, because you have to prove that your instance, when you go to sue an officer, you have to prove that your instance is exactly like an instance that gets proven before.
Yeah. The example that was given in the video was of a deputy that shot a 10-year-old kid and shot him in the leg while he was trying to shoot a dog in the yard. And when it went to federal court, it was thrown out because there was never a previous case where a cop was trying to shoot a dog when it hit a 10-year-old child. Do you see what I'm saying? Like, it has to be very specific. It has to fall under the same conditions, and then only it will be taken seriously and enacted upon. It's absolutely ridiculous. And also, there are laws to keep cops' misconduct records confidential. So this is what blows my mind, because I don't know how it is in the States, but in Canada, there's a right, I think it's called voluntary it's called like voluntary information or something, where you can reach out to the government and ask for like how much are people making. Like, all of this information is available publicly for people to access. So if government information is available for public access, why isn't police conduct reports or misconduct reports available for people to access? You need to know who these people are that are protecting you or taking the oath to protect you. And it's very, very interesting that their unions also shield them from legal consequences.
Police unions are the worst. That's where it really needs to start. Like,
Bro,
people need to go into the police
unions
and start changing there. Because as long as police unions are the way that they are, cops aren't going to change. They're going to keep doing what they're doing because the police unions will protect them.
Yeah, exactly.
So Ninja broke down why he didn't agree with the primate. So,
Okay.
He said when the movement is Black Lives Matter, it automatically is sending the message that it's a race thing. It's not stop police brutality. It's not
stop political injustice.
Political injustice, or stop political corruption. My point is, putting race in the name makes it about race. The 1% of cases that does not fall under the race, it is not being seen as important because it's all Black Lives Matter. Now, for me, and to my understanding, again, Black Lives Matter, the movement, or at least the leaders will never say, well, your case is unimportant because you're not Black. No. It is written in such a way that it's going to rub people the wrong way. If your focus is not in the right spot to actually get down and understand where they're coming from, it's going to rub you the wrong way. It's supposed to be a uncomfortable post, if that makes sense. There's a lot of uncomfortable, slogans and posts and things like that. Make America great again. Sorry to get political.
We are going to talk about that. We're going to end off the stream with that.
I'm sorry to get political. But to say make America great again, one, begs the argument that America is no longer great now, one. And two, when do you believe, what time frame are you specifically saying that your opinionated statement of great is an opinionated, some person could say this was great, another person could say it was terrible. That is not a fact, it is an opinion. So already that statement rubs some people the wrong way, as Black Lives Matter is going to rub people the wrong way. You have to get down to the nitty gritty and want the truth of, okay, well, what is your definition of great, and when was America great that we need to go back to again? Tell me, I need to know. As when you have to delve into Black Lives Matter, again, it's not saying that only Black Lives Matter and only the case with Black people and only when Black people die by the police. Again, it's across the board because it's dealing with a system of racism concerning Black people. Now, do other people experience the same racism that Black people experience?
Mm-hmm.
Yes. There have been Latino people who have been denied housing. There have been Asian people who have not been given a job because they don't sound like the person they want them to sound like. Now, you can't be upset when one group of people come together and rally behind one idea. If you are supportive of the idea, then either join with them and say, hey, I may not be able to culturally relate or be a part of this, but I understand where you're coming from. Or listen, honestly, if there was a group that said Latino Lives Matter, awesome. I'm happy that, that their demographic is able to come together and say, you know what, we're being mistreated too. And again, we need to stop missing the forest for the trees and the issue, because the issue is not so much saying that's not what we're getting at. It's only Black Lives Matter and only Black things matter. But what's funny is our voices were not heard until we had to do something like that. And that's the tragedy of it all.
Yep.
Until we had to say, hey, Black Lives Matter, we're being treated poorly. The world would not have listened because we tried to say this more times before. Again, I go back to Colin Kaepernick. He tried to say, yeah, the police are killing people. And it's not being seen. It's not being addressed. And he was told to shut up and keep playing football. He was told to stand up and go out on the field. So I would challenge anyone in reference to you're focusing on, well, now it's a race issue because you put Black lives in the middle of it. Baby, it's been a race issue. And it's not so much the Black people that are mad. Black people are being killed and murdered. Yes, we're furious. But it's not so much because Black people want to make it a race issue. We've been targeted. When you've been targeted for so long, when you've been targeted for over 400 years, baby, it's been a race issue from the beginning. So you have to look at it with some empathy and with some understanding of, well, why are they calling it Black Lives Matter instead of Stop Police Brutality? Because police, if they aren't putting you in prison, they are killing you if you're Black.
Yep. And I do want to take some time to look a little deeper into the police training, because I found this very interesting when I was watching that Patriot Act video with Hassan Minhaj. And he was saying that there's only about 8 to 12 weeks sometimes in certain states that people in the academy are trained for policing.
$800.
Take that in. $800, 8 to 12.
Hours.
8 to 12 weeks. Oh, thank you. 8 to 12 weeks for this training for serving and protecting various demographics. And guess what? Out of all of that, I was reading an article where it said there was one person, an ex-cop, who was given 1,500 pages of a training manual. Okay, of that, only 10 to 20 pages covered effective communication and verbal de-escalation techniques. What does that tell you? Most of what they're taught is in an interview with a person named Seth Stoughton, who's currently a law professor, but he was also a city cop for 5 years, a state investigator for 2.5 years. He said police officers are trained to basically see everyone as a threat. So you know how most it's like innocent until proven guilty. You already guilty. Like they're looking, or he or she, like the police officer, is looking at everyone with skeptical eyes, everybody, and they are taught that if you just give someone a second when you're not off their when you are off their guard, they will take advantage of it and you will die. So that paranoia is drilled into them in their teaching. It's a fear-based training, and you need to be on your guard all the time. And so people often act before a threat is even manifested as a threat. And another ex-cop said out of 129 hours were spent on weapons training and fighting, while only 8 hours on de-escalation techniques. So basically you're being taught not to hesitate. There is a game that he was told that they played in the academy where there's 2 people and it's a finger gun game, and you're basically supposed to see who you're supposed to have. Like, I think it's one person who's supposed to be the victim and one person's supposed to be the cop, and you are supposed to shoot the other person first before the other person gets a shot on you. And what they're teaching you is, you don't know what the person has in their hand, but it could be a gun. So if you see them flinch a little bit, better pull the trigger, because it could be, your life could be in danger. So again, before a threat even fully manifests itself, and we've seen this in countless occasions. What is it, Philando Castillo, where he was trying to pull his license from underneath. He was just pulling it out. He even let them know, I have a licensed firearm. He let them know he did his due diligence, and he was still shot multiple times. I think it was in the span of 7 minutes or something. It was like 9 shots, something ridiculous like that. Yeah, 90 seconds, 7 shots in the span of 90 seconds.
4-year-old in the back of the car.
With the child in the back of yeah. So it's and they have professors like Dave Grossman who normalizes and encourages violence as their defense. So this professor comes and says, use violence as your tool. Violence is your defense. If you properly prepare yourself, killing is just not that big of a deal. Imagine hearing this from your professor who's training you. And guess what? One of his students was the cop who shot Philando Castillo, which is a really interesting correlation.
Shocker.
Right? Shocker. So this is embedded in their training, guys, and that's why it's so scary, and that's why I think a part of the reform needs to start there. Instead of pouring funding into, instead of pouring more funding into equipment, maybe you should be pouring funding into de-escalation techniques, or before you get to the gun, maybe there should be other techniques that are in place. Policies and procedures need to change. And we're once we have this
More
discussion.
psych evaluation.
Oh my God! Speaking of psych evaluation,
evaluations for these cops.
Speaking of psych evaluation, yeah, go for it.
I want to touch on that too.
Yeah.
In my class, I'm a psych major. My doctor, or my professor, Dr. Sharp, he has a doctorate in clinical psychology. He does what is it called? Consultant work a lot with police officers. He's also a forensic psychologist. So he had a police officer come to him by recommendation from the police department, and Professor Sharp's recommendation was to not hire this man. This man decided that since my professor was black, he wasn't knowledgeable in his area, so he went to someone else, a white psychologist. The white psychologist say, "Oh, this guy's fine to hire." A couple years later, this same guy shoots an unarmed black man. Even if we do what we need to do to stop this, the system is still against us. They're still trying to kill us because we're perceived as a threat. That won't change until there's equal representation in media and across the board. Not just like, oh, black people have better jobs now. Stop showing so much negative depictions of black people in the media. Or if you're gonna still show it, show just as much good depictions of black people in the media. So people aren't stuck in between a place where it's like, oh, well, I get all this information from the media, so it's like, it must be true. Because with any other race, it's like we were saying, when white people shoot up places, oh, they have a mental illness. oh, when if a black person does something, it's like, oh well, they're just bad people.
They're just bad people.
There's we're treated differently from the beginning. I feel like I keep stressing this,
But
but
that's it is what it is.
I have to, because I don't think people are truly like understanding how much we're conditioned to believe that black people are a threat. And when people think that black people are a threat, they're gonna act to eliminate the threat before they can get eliminated. And it puts the black people that want to fight against this in a negative or in a position where it's like, well, I want to go out there and do this, but am I going to be seen as a target just because of the color of my skin? Am I going to be in jeopardy of being shot just because of the color of my skin if I'm trying to do good? You know what I'm saying?
Yep.
It's like,
sorry,
go ahead.
It's ironic to me that at these protests, I don't know if you guys have seen videos of the protests, but you could be a black person speaking out at a protest, and as soon as you're done talking, the police come up and arrest you.
Right.
And you're not given that freedom of speech. You're not given that. You're not given the opportunity to stand and scream at a megaphone like some people are in reference to speaking out against wearing a mask for coronavirus. You're immediately arrested because you're a threat, because you might incite them to do something. And along with that, going back to the police training, this is an article from CBS News. It's talking about police training and the comparison between this is I believe Norway and Finland. Yeah, Finland and Norway, how they're trained compared to the police in the United States. So it says, we are very far behind. It's problematic that we have over 18,000 different police departments, and there are no national standards. There's no accountability here in the United States. There's no standard for how these police are supposed to police correctly and effectively, said Haberfield. And if anyone would like this article, please feel free to DM me or Solo, with your permission, I'd be happy to post it.
Absolutely.
If anyone wants to read it. We got receipts, like, but
So
said, sorry, I was just gonna finish this. Said Haberfield, who was previously police lieutenant in Israel. In the U.S., training to be a police officer and carry a gun on behalf of the state, So it's not in the country; it's based off the state that you're in. And again, states have different laws that everyone has to keep up in their mind, apparently, where you live. On behalf of the state, ranges from as few as 10 weeks, as we discussed earlier, to as much as 36 weeks. Okay, it is a far cry from the years of education required in most Western European countries and others around the world. Haberfield has also written several books on international police practices, standards, and ethics. Said two countries that stand out for their police training are Finland and Norway. Officers in both countries attend their nation's 3-year police universities and leave with degrees that are the equivalent to a bachelor's. Now, police here in the States don't have to go to college, and they don't have to be educated in reference to policing or, law and order and enforcement and things like that.
I didn't know that.
You don't need any kind of
I didn't know that.
qualification.
Wow.
What's interesting is the current president, he wants to sign a bill. I don't know if he signed it or he wants to sign a bill in reference to people's requirements. He's saying that you no longer need a college education in reference to the fields that you're in, but you just have to fill the ramifications of that job.
Wow.
So that's getting in a sticky situation in itself. And just breaking down the years for the education of these police in these countries. Rune Golmse, a professor at the Norwegian Police University, I am not even going to attempt to pronounce that because I will butcher it, said that policing is approached as an academic discipline. It is the same quality of education that we have for teachers, nurses, and so on, these pillars of the community, these, that I stated earlier, who was also a police officer for 3 decades. So this man has credentials. He was a police officer for 30 years. He knows what he's talking about. He's lived it. The first year of the police education in Norway is focused on the role of the police in society and ethics. The second year, students shadow training officers, and before returning full-time for a 3rd year, it's focused on investigation and completing a thesis paper. Haberfield said that in many U.S. police departments, the stereotype is that officers in the prime of their careers try to avoid the burden of training rookies. So you're saying that the very best in the police department don't take the time to train the new people. One, that what's left, she said, is aging officers who themselves haven't been through training in decades, young cops who haven't gotten enough experience, or she said bad cops who get stuck with the assignment. So there's just that's what about 5 paragraphs. That could be a whole discussion in itself. But there's a lot to be said in reference to the American policing and other countries' policing. And Zilla, I was reading your comments and things like that. Yes, I'm not trying to knock the threat that the police see, but at the same time, when you have the opportunity to go in and you put your life on the line to be a police officer, you make that choice. And I'm not knocking their choice because the military does the same thing. You know you are verbally going to be threatened. Your life is threatened, but you know that. You've made that decision to put yourself in danger because you want to help people. If you're black, if you're born black, you don't get the choice to make a decision, oh, I want to be targeted because of my skin color. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Now, when the police are in your country and they target you specifically because you look like you are a criminal in their minds, because you look like a bad guy, I am going to instigate and investigate and target you, that is a problem. And that's why people are calling it out. That's why people are saying, no, what you're doing is wrong. Because with Elijah, he wasn't doing anything wrong. He just fit a narrative in their minds of, well, you look like a bad guy, so you must be a bad guy, so we're going to treat you like a bad guy. And we're saying the police need more education. They need to be better trained to do that. They have more than enough equipment to do that.
I do.
I think.
Sorry, go for it. Yeah.
I was gonna say another way to point out like Black Lives Matter. If you look at concealed carry with a black person or open carry with a black person that is met by police, you'll get completely different reaction than a white person that's being concealed carry or open carry being met by police. Completely different. And if you don't see the difference in that, then maybe you might be the problem. It's not that black people are perceived as more of a threat. It's because they have a gun. Because white people, like you guys remember when the Proud Boys took over the federal building with guns, like they were armed and they took over a federal building? Did you guys hear about that at all?
No.
Mm-hmm. When they were protesting coronavirus.
Yeah. Thank you.
We don't want to wear a mask, so we're coming up here with our guns and
with
guns, military grade weapons, and we're just gonna be out here standing angry.
And we're gonna take over. And imagine if that was black people. Matter of fact, we don't have to imagine it was black people because we have black people that are protesting right now that are getting beaten the shit out of them for protesting without guns.
Peacefully.
But peacefully. But you have Proud Boys with guns and it's like, oh, well, it's fine. Matter of fact, there was during the protests here in Salem, Oregon, there was a police officer that approached a group of Proud Boys and said, hey, my chain of command told me to approach you guys to ask you guys if you can step inside of the building. So once we start tear gassing everybody, it doesn't look like we're parent favorites. These guys were sitting there with guns, and there's protesters also sitting there with guns, but the cops come to the Proud Boys and says, hey, can you guys get out of here so we don't have to do these harmful things to you? But fuck them guys over there.
Yeah.
The captain or the police chief made a statement and said, oh, I'm sorry that you guys heard that.
Oh,
that's
my
it.
goodness. I'm sorry that you heard it.
But you have to understand, exactly, but you have to understand that it comes from the chain of command. So why should we expect him to say, oh, this is a horrible thing if he's the one issuing out these orders?
Yeah.
It leads back to the system against us from the beginning.
And that's what's crucial for people to see. You have to get out of it's black people against police officers. No, it's black people against a system that has oppressed them from the beginning of the nation that they built.
Yep.
Being there. So imagine, if you would, again, you're a part of a lineage that was enslaved, that pretty much did all the infrastructural work for a country to be built, but that country still has to oppress you and keep you down, so it doesn't acknowledge you as black people weren't even considered human beings until when? I don't even know when we were counted as human beings. I don't even think it was when we were freed as slaves. I think it was after that time. We were considered 3/5 a human being. Okay? Get that. So then after that, you have to play catch up, essentially, because we built the wealth for a lot of white people in the country, working as, slaves for a plantation and doing textile work in the North and all this stuff. We built their wealth for them. So now their families have generational wealth. They got wealth, and this is a whole nother topic. Even just building up money, and now you're free. So now you got to play catch up. And then you're trying to catch up, and then we build our own communities, and we make our money in these communities.
Black Wall Street.
Yep. And then those communities, what happens? They're flourishing, and then people see it, and they're like, we don't like that, and it gets destroyed.
Yeah. The same people that freed them from slavery are the ones who want to keep them behind. And it's sad if people don't see that, but this is true historical facts. People don't even know. People aren't even taught in U.S. history that there was such a thing as Black Wall Street. I had to find that out on my own, that Black Wall Street was a thing. So
more than just Black Wall Street too.
There's so many. I know, but I'm just saying Black Wall Street was the first thing that I heard that I didn't even know existed. And I want to address what Zilla said. I can send you a dash cam video of a person reaching the inside of his vehicle, but it ends off with 2 cops bleeding on the side of the road and the guy is driving off. I don't think that's fit for Discord, so I need you to take in consideration what police faces every day. Okay, you know what? I'm going to address your scenario with the Philando Castile case. Okay. I'm Philando Castile. There's a cop. I say, I have a gun. Just letting you know, I have a gun. Police officer has his own biases, already smells weed on me, is starting to think, he's wearing a wife beater or whatever he was wearing. He might be a little, I don't know, I'm a little spooked already. So he's already kind of on alert. Plus training, on alert, already on alert. Now this guy, I go to grab. If I already am fearful of my life, if I'm not mistaken, were there 2 people on site? Do you know? Was there a police officer in the car with that police officer? Do you guys know?
I'm sorry, say that one more time.
Were there 2 police officers? Was it just that one police officer and one in the car, or just one police officer?
Oh yeah, I don't know. Sorry.
Don't they travel together in pairs?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I thought too. So one was probably in the car. So my whole thing is, if you're perceiving a threat or you're afraid, why didn't they ask Philando Castile to get out of the car and ask him, where is your license and registration? He will say it's under the car, under the seat. Have one officer watch the person. And in an ideal scenario, you're doing this to white and Black people and any other person who you see as suspicious. Any other person who you have pulled over for similar reasons, and you go and grab the documentation yourself. My point of mentioning how this could have gone differently is that there were 2 officers. Thank you for that. Because yes, I understand there's a dash cam and it could have gone south. Maybe he did have a gun. I don't know. Maybe they searched the car and didn't find a gun. I don't know, whatever the guy was afraid of. But there are measures you can take in place to prevent these kinds of mishaps from happening. There have been so many cases where someone goes to grab their ID or grab information from their pocket and they're like, oh, they automatically think that they're drawing a weapon. There are ways to get around that. You can also search the person yourself. You can also get that person out of the car, and your partner can go and grab the information. Like, there are ways. So I don't see that as an excuse, really, Zilla. And I would love to see a social worker de-escalate a situation of someone waving a machete. Again, not applicable, at least in Canada. In Canada, we're only sent social workers and mental health workers for wellness checks, or if someone has explained that they have mental health issues. And if it's a dangerous situation like that, I understand that you need to protect yourself with a gun, but we're talking about situations where people are not even armed. People don't even have a gun and they're being shot. Like, it's a completely different scenario.
I'm sorry. I'm talking on the same thing. You have to think, if this man did want to cause harm to the police, why the fuck would he tell them that he has a weapon on him? Like, what's the point of that? He's telling them obviously so they can feel safer, but it does the exact opposite.
Yeah, it does. Yeah,
it's ridiculous.
Also, at the end of the day, we have to not fall into the trap of whataboutism.
Yeah,
you have to look at each scenario in each case for what it is, with the evidence and things around it. Again, I'm sorry with these 2 police officers that were shot and probably lost their lives. They may have lost their lives. and I'm sorry to hear that.
Mm-hmm.
However, those police, that is a, and it's first off, losing life is a tragedy to begin with.
Yes.
But those police knew that that was a probability. That was very possible. As a civilian, you don't think a police officer is going to kill you when you're doing the right thing. When you're trying to do everything right, that should not be the end. That shouldn't be the end all be all. That shouldn't be the first thing coming across my mind, Disciple's mind, Samurai's mind, Raven's mind, anytime we get stopped. Okay? Again, we're getting caught up on something that is a whataboutism, and the real issue is police need to be trained better because this has been the norm. Did you guys not know that the police were used as a weapon back in the 60s and in the 50s? If the Klan couldn't reach someone, the police would hold them in jail. The police would hold them in jail, and then white people would riot, raid the jail, get the person, and kill them. And even now, to this day, people make threats. Well, I'm going to call the police on you.
Mm-hmm.
They remove them from the park. I'm going to call the police because you're talking to me this kind of way and I don't like it. I'm calling the police because you're defacing property, your own property. Like, we need to, again, address the issue. Yes, police officers die unfairly to criminals. But those
100%, and it's wrong, and that's why I made that disclaimer right in the beginning, where we don't support any violence, we don't support any killing, none of that.
However, and again, please keep the focus on the issue, guys. When the police are not being held accountable for unjustly killing not one, not two, not three, but hundreds of people in a matter of years, y'all.
Yep.
This is something that they haven't been held accountable for decades from old cases, but now this is so prevalent, and what's crazy is now we have the ability to see it. That's why it's being so discussed, because one, you can't trust their body cams all the time, and I'm happy people are actually recording them because you're supposed to record.
Yes.
If you are a protector of the community, or you're enforcing the law, then you need to be held accountable when you don't do that correctly. When they're turning off their body cams and doing suspicious activities, and you guys here where I live, I know at least one, but I think 3 police officers got arrested because they got approved to be police officers, and they were like, I'm so excited, I can't wait to kill some N-words. They literally said that, and it got caught on their body cams, and now they got discharged. They were fired for saying that. They should be. They should be in more trouble. And so what that tells me, and I would hope if anyone, you draw a common, context clues, there is a system, again, in place that says we need to target a specific demographic and a specific and that's what we are acknowledging. We're not trying to say, well, defund the police because they have too much money. We're not saying defund the police or we should make the police weaker. We're not saying that.
Yep.
We're saying you have abused your power for far too long, and you need to be defunded so that money can be put elsewhere to actually do this correctly.
Yes.
Because apparently it hasn't been used right.
Yeah. And Ninja, to add to Ninja's point, for context, in Philando Castile's case, he mentioned he has a weapon. He was asked for the registration of the weapon, which is what he went to grab, and then he was shot for grabbing what the police officer asked him to grab. So there's that. Samurai, you were saying something?
Yeah. To be honest, and the more I think about it, the more I'm like making a realization that this isn't necessarily a police problem. It's a people problem.
Mm-hmm.
People carry their biases that they learn from wherever they learn them, and when they become a police, they have the power now to act whatever way they want. It's not just about like police reform. I think it's a reform across the board. If people don't see black people as a threat, police aren't going to kill black people. Police are killing black people because they see them as a threat. It's not necessarily all police officers, but the police officers that continue to carry these biases, they're doing it. And to say that to say that if we fix the training and everything, then the problem will be fixed, I think that's like, it's wishful thinking.
It's part of it. It's so much more than that, yeah.
Yeah, but it's more than that, because they're still going to have those same thoughts. You know what I'm saying? They're just going to be trained better but they're still going to be thinking the exact same thing. So when a situation does pop up, when they can exercise their power on a threat, they're going to do it regardless of how much training that they have.
And this is, I think, a great segue into the topic that I wanted to end off on. Where I wanted to end off on is we have talked about the history of slavery. We have talked about how far we've come. We have talked about police brutality. We have talked about the issues with police training and police culture. We have talked about symbols of racism, systemic racism, privilege. We have acknowledged the various injustice that's happening. You know what? Actually, to Samurai's point, I want to show you all a video that's going to make us all very uncomfortable, but I think we need to be uncomfortable. There was a video that was trending of this woman that has had these very disgusting and hateful things to say. And when I watched that video, I thought to myself, can you imagine if she was a cop? Can you imagine if she was in a position of hiring? Can you imagine if she was in a position where she had some kind of power? And she's holding these kinds of views. And I need you all to just focus on what is being said in this video and realize that it's 2020.
Think objectively here.
Yeah.
Don't watch this with your emotions.
Yeah.
Look at this objectively.
Okay, here we go.
Hell, if I see anybody burning an American flag, black or otherwise, I'll hate your ass so hard that you'll become yourself.
Portland again, racist state. I said it before, I'll say it again.
Yeah.
You know,
Funny
if I
thing,
see
my
anybody
wife went to school with
burning
her.
an American flag, black or otherwise, I'll hate crime your ass so hard that you'll be calling yourself Kunta Kinte. So let's grow the fuck up a little bit. Burning a flag is gonna do nothing but get you, your ass stomped even blacker, or dead.
Do you hear this?
Because the funny thing is, you American hating assholes, go to any other country and see how you're treated as an African American. We gave you freedom, you dumb, unthankful pieces of shit. So you can thank us, the Republicans, for letting you act like assholes like you are right now. Because I guarantee if we were able to have slavery again, I'd make
Listen
y'all
to this.
slaves so you wouldn't act and destroy our cities anymore. You make us regret abolishing slavery.
You make us regret abolishing
Good job, guys.
slavery.
And before you illiterate assholes blow up my DMs like I give a fuck
Illiterate.
about your opinion on Black Lives Matter, just know I don't. I don't give a fuck about any of you. I give a fuck about my city, where I grew up for 33 years, that you're destroying. That's all I give a fuck about. I give a fuck about the safety of my son and my family. The one you
And she has procreated.
by acting like fucking animals. So, no, fuck you. I don't care about your DMs. Block me if you don't like what I have to say. The truth hurts. Burn a flag, burn a black person, I say.
So this is a video that was taken, I guess, a few weeks ago. This is a real person with real racist views and is not afraid of vocalizing them. And I do think that people in power make a huge difference when they allow you to. I think someone mentioned this earlier. They said that the people that are now in power have just allowed racists to come forward and be more bold with their views. And the reason I wanted to share that video is because when I was watching it, my skin was crawling it. And like I could feel my face getting hot. Like, I'm not a black person, but it was bothering me because I don't have to be black to realize that that was wrong. Everything that she said was wrong on so many accounts, and it's so ignorant and completely uncalled for. And these are, I don't know what she does for a living. I don't know who she is. Samurai said his wife went to school with her, but this is real stuff. This is a real person with these views in 2020. We don't have to look too far. We don't have to look in the past. And it's absolutely, did Black Twitter, I don't know. I checked a few days ago, but I didn't see anything of them finding out her job and getting her fired or anything. Oh wait, I think she was let go. I think she was fired. I think she was fired. I think she was fired. I think she was fired.
Her name
If
is
I'm not
Lindsay
mistaken.
Clark.
What's her name?
Lindsay Clark.
Lindsay Clark.
I'm pretty sure she got
didn't eat
all
it.
the way canceled. People are already in her DMs about the video. She references it. But the sad thing is, despite all of that, there are people who think like that that have power, that have money, that have privilege, that have opportunity, have opportunities to keep people oppressed. And at the end of the day, you have to ask yourself, do you agree with them?
Yeah.
Do you agree with those people? Do you agree with those people? Are you comfortable letting them do that? Because if you are comfortable, if you find yourself saying, well, I'm not really worried about it, then you are part of the problem. And that's the end of the discussion, honestly, in my opinion. Because until you realize that people saying things like that and believing that are, until you come to the innate internal realization and revelation that that is fundamentally wrong, you're not going to have a problem. And you're not going to do anything about it. Because you're going to keep having, what about this? What about that? And you're not, my end goal is, if you speak up about the injustice, if you feel like something is wrong and you speak up about it, you did your due diligence.
Yes.
But
Yes.
if you're comfortable enough to just let it slide and just, well, it's not affecting me, then you're part of the issue. And that's what's wrong. And that needs to change. And how that changes, I don't know how that's going to look, but it's not going to be something easy, and it's not going to be, again, you're going to be uncomfortable.
Yeah.
If that mirror is brought up, it's going to be uncomfortable.
Yeah. And the reason I showed that video is also to show that she has clearly not taken this time as a way to reflect, be introspective, and be like, what implicit biases do I hold? Because I truly believe that one of the ways that we can move past this time is to first and foremost look inside ourselves and be conscious of our implicit biases. Because Shogun mentioned a really good point. He's like, if we're being real, I mean, this is Raven's Real Talk, we're being real over here, we all have our own implicit biases. It only starts to become a problem when we act on those biases and we start discriminating against other people and having negative stereotypes and acting on those negative stereotypes, which is what we're seeing happening around the world. So one thing I think that we can all do and we can all benefit from is looking inside of ourselves. I think Rhetoric posted a, I can't tab out right now, but if you're part of the Discord, Rhetoric, if you want to link it, it's a implicit biases test. And if you go through it, it kind of like brings to light the implicit biases that you could have that are like deeply rooted in your subconscious. So I think that's one great way to be cognizant of the biases that you have, and teach your kids that even if they are not themselves experiencing these things, they should not negate people's experiences. They might be white and have privilege, but you don't want your child growing up with, I never experienced it, therefore it doesn't exist. You need to, take this opportunity to educate your children and expose them to people of other races and other cultures so that they have that exposure and they are not kind of growing up in a bubble. I understand there are some cities where it's predominantly white and you cannot do that. That's totally understandable. I'm just saying, if you have the opportunity, if you're not letting your child play with X, Y, and Z, it maybe ask yourself, why? Is it because of their skin color and you only want them to play with people of your own skin color? I think that showing them videos also that are showing, maybe not to the extreme, but police brutality or injustice, because maybe they won't experience it, but they need to know that it's happening in the world. It makes me so happy when I see kids drawing like the Black Lives Matter, being part of paintings and at these protests, because their parents are exposing them to this reform, and it really needs to happen. It starts from within. Then I want to share this really cute picture that always like touches my heart. It's really cute. It can you guys see this? I don't know if you can see it yet. Can you guys see that? No?
I'm not seeing anything.
Barely.
No,
It's really small.
Oh
You,
man.
There's a way to press, I think it's like
Oh,
the
yeah.
plus button, and you can zoom in on the screen.
Plus.
I think is it Shift Plus or Control Plus? I can't remember.
Oh, Control Plus. Thank you.
Come on, zoom
Yes.
in. That's right.
So
That's
this
for
is
free, y'all.
Thank you for those tech tips. So it says, until you fix it here, which means being introspective and healing and being cognizant of your own personal biases, so fixing your heart, and address it here. Talk about it in your homes, create that conversation, talk to your kids, talk to your family, talk to your parents, talk to your grandparents that might have really stereotypical and negative views. You can't change the freaking world, guys. It starts with each of us. So fix your heart, address it in your home, and then you can change the world. I think this picture is so beautiful. When I saw this, it just warmed my heart, right? It's simple, but it really, really sends the points home. Really does. And then we could go on and on about police training, the things that could be changed. Do you guys have any suggestions of things that could be changed? I mean, there are so much, but so much.
Things that could
I think-
change to. Go ahead, Samurai.
I personally feel like until black people aren't perceived as a threat, we should be able to police ourselves. That way we can address what we need to address without having to worry about anybody else coming in to say, oh, well, you know, this is our job to do this since you guys can't do it on your own, so we're going to police you the way we see fit. And the way they see fit isn't going to go with how we want to be dealt with, because you can't deal with every person the same way. Each person is an individual. You can't treat you can't generalize. So give black people in black neighborhoods, or if you're gonna have white people policing black neighborhoods, make those white people stay in those black neighborhoods so they can build rapport with the black community, and they have firsthand experience of those people in that community, and not just the perception of what they've seen in the media, because we already know that that's gonna be a bad light. We're not gonna get a fair shake there. So give us a chance when you come to the community.
Spot on. Police officers should be policing in neighborhoods, I feel, in which they grew up in, because if they know the people around in that area, they have a better interactions with them.
And I feel like a lot of pushback is going to be like, well, if that's the case, then you're going to have black people killing black people. Well, then if that's the case, it's going to make world a lot easier for the racist people that already don't care. Right? And it's going to give more of a incentive for black people to figure out what the issue is and address it instead of relying on someone else.
So you were saying that the police officers should be assigned duties based on where they have ties?
So, yeah, like imagine you're policing somewhere where you're not even familiar with. You don't know those people, so you're gonna base your perception off of them off of what you've seen, or the split-second interaction that you have with them. It's probably not gonna be positive if you're there in the first place, unless you're just walking around greeting people, and that's building rapport. Once you build rapport with someone, you build an understanding with someone, you open up a line of communication that's not easily torn down, or like people can say, oh, well, it's easier form of communication once you know someone, right? I can talk to Dan or Mook or someone in the chat that I know easier than I can talk to you guys because I know them. If police come into the community and they build that rapport, then they know, okay, this guy just robbed a store, but I know him. I know his family. Let's figure out what the problem is and let's go address it. It's not like, oh, this guy robbed the store and he has a gun. This guy's a shooter, so let's kill him. Like, well, address it to where the people are getting a chance to be seen as a human. Humans are good, humans are bad, but give us a fair chance, not just they're bad.
Do you think rapport could be created with anyone? Let's just say I'm not familiar with where you live, but if I'm assigned to your community, if I kind of like go door to door, or if I hold like a meeting where I'm just introducing myself and saying, hey, listen, I've been assigned to your area, kind of like, I create a rapport without even being part of your community?
You can.
I'm thinking about this way. If a cop came to my house, or if a cop came to my community and they were interested in talking to me and interested in understanding the community that I come from, I'd be much more confident in my daughter's safety when she goes out than if a cop that I don't know, that has no idea of who we are, comes and just sees a black kid with a toy gun. Well, that's probably a real gun, let's shoot him. Like,
Okay.
no.
So maybe we
also-
should push for a change where people are treating the people that they are serving and protecting as human beings and just getting to know them a bit more, trying to understand the community that they are trying to protect.
Yeah.
Instead
Yeah.
of being fearful of them.
I don't
And
think it's
Exactly.
as deep as the cops needing to live in our neighborhoods and things like that, but to a degree, because it's like, first off, we need to acknowledge that in addressing this one issue, you open again, Pandora's box to so many more issues. Because I think one of the biggest things is we have to address that the cops are only out taking these beats and going to specific areas and specific neighborhoods so that they fill a quota for the prison system.
Yes.
That needs to be fixed.
That needs to be fixed. Amen.
And
True.
Ninja Heart said it earlier in reference to, slavery has just been, and we addressed this earlier in the stream, but Ninja, I want you to know we are reading your comments and you're being heard, but we did address earlier in reference to the 13th Amendment. Slavery has just been remixed through the prison system.
Yes.
You essentially become the state slave in the prison system. Well, how do you get slaves? You got to find them out in the street somewhere, imprison them, and then put them in.
Yeah.
So in referring to police change and how do we reform that, that needs to change. That needs to be different. The police, we need something. It sucks to think that we need police for the police, but we need
do.
some way to answer, to have the police. There needs to be some higher up that the police need to answer to.
Qualified immunity needs to be taken out. Qualified
And-
immunity needs to be taken
Or
out.
go back to what it was originally supposed to be used for.
Right. And the
now
police
we're
need to
doing that.
stop working for these private prisons. That's another thing. There's so much money in the prison industry that needs to be talked about and discussed, because that's where the money is. That's where people's focus is. Going back to, slaves were property. If prisons have people in them that they can get grants and funds and, money for, that's what they're going to want. So there's a lot of private prison systems that have their own police that go throughout these states. It's literally a built-up system, you guys, and that's why I'm trying to get away from this and tell you, well, the police aren't all bad and blah 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 blah. Not saying blah 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 blah. I need you guys to see the system, and that's the issue. So in order to change, in order to reform the police, we need to look at the system and see what cogs need to be taken out, what things, what wrench needs to be thrown into this and repair this, because honestly, we have a leaking oil and it's a fucking fire. Everything is just burning because this system was put in place to ruin everything. Because you have housing, you have neighborhoods, you have ghettos and things like that these police are supposed to police, where crime is going on because the government has fed into the drug war, planting cocaine and crack and heroin into these black communities and things like that. So of course there's going to be crime going on. So why not send the police? And once you have crime, you can arrest them and then you put them in prison. And now you have money, and the cycle just continues and continues and continues and continues.
And if you haven't watched the documentary 13th on Netflix,
Please.
it goes right into that. It explains what Shogun just said. Not to mention there are still black people today facing double-digit prison sentences for marijuana charges, while white people are capitalizing off of this $1
Getting
billion
rich off of it.
They're getting rich off of the same thing black people are doing prison sentences for, which is ridiculous.
Ridiculous. Yeah. And I also think that if you are not a person of color and you are white and you're thinking, what can I do? I've addressed my personal biases. I've talked to my friends and family. What else can I do? Use your privilege to try to make a change. Give people a voice who don't have a voice. There are people of color who don't have a voice, and you do. So, create awareness. Educate yourselves like you are right now. We're educating ourselves too as people of color. But it's, I think, almost more important for people who are not people of color to educate themselves and spread that awareness, because you do have the power. You do hold the power right now. You do hold that privilege. And if you shy away from this conversation, or it's uncomfortable for you, or it's something that you don't want to acknowledge, then more people are just going to suffer. And you never know, you might be in a position where of power where you are able to make a difference. And if you don't arm yourself with knowledge, and if you don't arm yourself with awareness, then you are not going to be able to help anyone. And I'm not saying that people are ill-minded by nature. I feel like, again, it's okay to be ignorant, but it's not okay to stay ignorant. This is not a time for ignorance. Like, this is a time to challenge yourself, grow, improve. And I also wanted to mention that sometimes police officers can give conflicting what's that called? No, make conflicting requests, like, don't move, put your hands up.
Yeah.
And that can be twisted and turned into they were resisting arrest. So I'm not sure how well it works in scenarios, but if you are in a situation like that, maybe I've never been in a situation like that. That's why I don't like commenting on situations where I have no experience with. But I'm just constantly thinking about ways to de-escalate situations. And I keep thinking about the Philando Castile. I keep thinking about don't move, put your hands up. And I'm wondering if it would help at all to say, do you want me to not move, or do you want me to put my hands up? But then that might be taken as they're resisting arrest. So again, I think the deeper seated issue is the biases that they have and the biases with which they're looking at you. It's tough, man. It's really tough. I do think police culture needs to change. I think the training needs to change. There needs to be more emotional intelligence training. Apparently, I was reading an article where police officers, there is no way to weed out people who are more aggressive than others or extremely aggressive just by nature. And that's how you get these extremely aggressive officers that come into the role, because think about it, they're just doing a written test and they're doing a physical test. How is emotional intelligence being captured? How is their de-escalation abilities being taken into account? It's not. And ex-cops have mentioned this in interviews where they have said I don't even know how that would possibly come up in the assessments needed to get into the academy. So think about it. There are people there. We see this in wellness checks when people end up being beaten and bruised when police officers are sent to do a wellness check. This is a person who clearly has mental health issues, and a police officer is sent to go do a wellness check and check up on them, and they're getting thrown to the ground, beat on while they're handcuffed already and defenseless. There's no excuse for that. There needs to be better treatment and training around how to deal with people who have mental health issues as well. You should not. There has been a case recently in, I think, Toronto, where there was a guy who suffered from schizophrenia. Cops were called, or no, a nurse was called, and he didn't comply with the nurse, so they called the cops. The cops came, put a ladder up to his balcony, broke down the door, and just shot him, tased him, and he's like a 60-something-year-old guy, already old, already frail and feeble, on the ground, and they shot him up and he died. Like, what is the reasoning and excuse for that? This is someone who clearly suffers from mental health issues, and there have been countless moments where police officers are sent for wellness checks and people end up dead. So it's something wrong with the system. It's something wrong with the training. It's something wrong with the people that are being just funneled out of this police academies. And there needs to be more accountability. There needs to be way more accountability for cops. They cannot be protected. Their unions cannot protect them like this. I feel like we shouldn't even get to a point where it's who watches the watchmen policing the policemen, because the laws should be in place already holding them accountable. But maybe that's too much to ask. I don't know. I really don't. Do you all have anything final to add before we find someone damn scrumptious to raid and spread that good lovin'?
I think it's, again, going back to the premise of where we started this conversation. One, I want to say thank everybody for being here, even in the chat. If you have a disagreement or anything that we've said you may disagree with, and that's fine. That's the world that we live in. But at the same time, you cannot discredit somebody else's experience.
Yes.
Just because you don't experience it doesn't mean that it does not happen. There's a fly buzzing around my head. Go away. But sorry. But and I'm thankful that there are people and that you guys are in the chat here that are willing to have this conversation.
Absolutely.
And it's going to get worse before it gets better, because the deeper down the rabbit hole you go, the darker and scarier it gets. But we have to acknowledge it with an open mind and an open heart and be willing to change when we're convicted by something. At the end of the day, we have to be able to say, okay, this is as far as I'm able to go today. I have to stop. I have to stop. I have to process. And I have to reflect, like you said, Raven, on everything that we discussed. And for your own, I would challenge you guys for your own biases, whether you are black, brown, white, whatever you are, whoever you are, I would challenge you to, again, do your research, talk to somebody, and not so much talk to them so that you have a response ready. But talk first to where you open up the dialogue and really listen to what they have to say.
Mm-hmm.
And again, Ninja, is it Zilla?
Zilla, yeah.
Zilla, please feel free to send me the stuff y'all are sending Raven. I would love to see what you guys are talking about. My DMs are open. It's Roroni Shogun. I'm in Raven's her Discord as well.
Mm-hmm.
So again, I'm not gonna come up here and then just close off the conversation to you guys.
Absolutely.
But this is very serious to me. I'm sure it's serious to these gentlemen and to Solo herself. That because I can only speak for myself. I've lived this shit, y'all.
Yeah.
Like I know what it's like to be a black man in America. And when I see a black person get killed on the street, or when I see these viral videos, it's like that could be me.
Yep.
It could literally be me. All it takes is one bad day.
Yep.
And I need y'all, in reference that may not have the same experience as us, I need y'all to have a little bit of empathy and some compassion.
Empathy and compassion. Empathy and compassion. I almost didn't go to TwitchCon because I was afraid of being racially profiled, and I heard terrible stories. And now that I have not experienced that, am I going to look at other people who were warning me and say, it didn't happen to me, therefore it doesn't exist? No, I'm going to look at them with compassion, kindness, and empathy and be like, I didn't experience that, but I'm not discounting your experience. And I'm sure it's a reality if so many people have experienced it. Just like if you are a black man, for example, who has not experienced it. I have seen a video of a woman saying, I'm not oppressed. Yeah, I'm not oppressed. I went to university. I got my master's in this and this. That's amazing. That's great for you. But what about all the other people who don't have access to education because of systemic racism? What about people who are being oppressed? You cannot speak for a whole race just because you have not experienced it. So that's all we're asking. We're asking for empathy. We're asking for kindness. I know there were a lot of comments that I missed in chat. I deeply apologize. Sometimes when you are deeply rooted in a discussion and you want to give everyone the attention that they deserve, it's hard to kind of like keep up with all the comments, especially when each comment can be like a whole 20-minute conversation on its own. So I do apologize for all the comments that I did miss. What's that called? Samurai and Dashni, would you like to say anything to end off the chat?
Yeah.
End off the conversation?
I just want to say, be willing to look at things from a different perspective. Everyone has their own beliefs, everyone has their own wants and desires, but you can't reach understanding unless you're willing to see things from another perspective. Take yourself objectively out from your perception and look at it from someone else's. Try to be empathetic of what the situation is that they might be going through, or the experiences that they might have. Just because you don't doesn't mean it's not there.
Yep. In my Discord, I do have a Black Lives Matter, shout out to Voice Crack, Black Lives Matter channel that is set up specifically to share resources and to have discussions. So you all are more than welcome to join in, share your resources, share your videos, share your conversations, your thoughts, your opinions. The only thing that I do not stand for is if someone is blatantly being disrespectful and being abusive. But other than that, you are more than welcome to share your opinions, but if someone doesn't agree with you or someone doesn't is not on the same page as you, it's the same thing with people in chat that come and don't have the same opinion as me. I'll try to explain things to you, but am I going to say, well, then that just means you're a shitty person? No, I'll just be like, okay, to each your own. That's your opinion, and that's fine. I've kind of explained my part. I've explained my stance on things. And if you want to have a further discussion, that's cool. But I'm not going to I don't want to be that person that is a broken record. Like, if I've already explained something, I don't want to have to keep explaining the same thing in like 10 different ways. Does that make sense? Because then I feel like at that point, maybe I'm the problem. Like, maybe I'm just not explaining it properly, and maybe you need to get that information from someone else who's more eloquently spoken, possibly, because it might be a me problem. But again, everyone is welcome to reach out to any of us.
I think given like more examples to try to explain the one thing from multiple different angles, you encompass a lot more people that might see it from that perspective. So if you have to explain one thing by doing 10 different like examples, then by all means you're gonna get someone to understand you from a different perspective or from a different example that they might have from the first one.
Yeah, exactly. I just meant like if you're talking to the same person and you're using 10 different examples and they still don't get it, at that point I'm just like, maybe it's just a me problem. Like, I'm sorry, maybe I'm just not explaining it well. And I hope no one felt targeted or felt like they were not welcome here. I know, Ninja, you mentioned that my opinion is not welcome here or whatever. You said something along those lines. And your opinion is welcome here. We've even had conversations about it in private as well. There were situations where you might have felt like you were targeted, and I'm sorry if you felt that way, but this is not that kind of space, and I hope you recognize that. Same thing with you, Zilla. I think when the last time we had a huge discussion about the Black Lives Matter in my Let's Get Deep in my Discord, we shared resources, we had a conversation, we talked about it, and I hope you didn't feel targeted as well. It's not a personal thing. When we talk about when we have a discussion about these Black Lives Matter and these subtopics, it's hard not to take it personally when someone disagrees with you, but it's not a personal thing. Does that make sense? Yeah. Okay. Cool.
I'm over here saying yeah, and I'm muted.
I know what's gonna happen is if I like scroll through chat and like try to go through everything that I've missed, I'm going to have to ask a lot like, wait, what was that in reference to? Sorry. So I will definitely go back in the VOD and I will be reading through the comments. And if I have any further questions, I hope you guys don't mind, but I might message you separately just so you feel like I didn't ignore your comment. And this VOD will be posted to YouTube later if you guys did want to watch it so that it doesn't get taken down.
I don't exactly like really have anything to add on top of what you all just said. I mean, thank you everyone for coming up and listening to us talk about these difficult topics, but these are topics that need to be discussed. And if there's something you don't quite understand or you don't know, you want more information of, I would just say, like, when you go to ask the question, just be mindful on the intention behind why you're asking. Like, if you're asked to be educated and to get an understanding, don't just ask looking for looking to counter.
Yes.
Don't just ask the question looking to make a counter argument.
Yeah.
And I would also encourage people to, again, if you did not click, I would say watch the video again.
Yeah.
Don't let this be your only conversation where you've heard Black people talk about Black Lives Matter. Don't let this be the only conversation where you've heard people talk about police brutality. I hope as this topic, I hope that this is a process and not a event. I'll say that again. I hope that this is a process and not just an event. I hope that anybody here who in chat, we're actually being proactive in listening to different narratives and different sides of the story. But also don't let this just stop.
Completely agree. Yeah. And I do want to thank everyone in chat for participating, for taking time out of your busy schedule and your busy lives to, whether it was lurk, to spend your time with us, to chill with us, to participate, to absorb new information. And I really do appreciate it. And most importantly, thank you guys, Shogun, Dashni, and Samurai, for blessing me with your thoughts and your opinions and your eloquent speech. I really appreciate it. The way that you phrase things really gave a new perspective on things, and I really appreciate your time, guys. I know it totally went way more than I thought it was gonna go, but this is just a tip, man. This is just a tip. There's so much more to talk about.
I love it. Let me know if you're doing it again. I'm happy to join you as well. Join you again.
Absolutely. Thank you
for having
guys.
me.
having us. Yeah.
Thank
Thank
you.
Double Take for giving me the connection to be here. I appreciate you.
Shout
thank
out
you.
to Double Take. Yes. Guys, if you give me just a couple minutes, I'm going to say bye to these damn scrumptious guests off screen. And then we are going to do my exercise reps. And then we're going to raid Shadow Gamer because he is on.
Hey, turn it.
So give me 2 minutes, please. I will be right back. Thank you guys so much for chilling with me, spending your precious time with me. I really appreciate it. We are going to head over to Shadow Gamer's stream. We are spreading that good loving over to him. I will be taking some time out and reviewing the VOD to catch up on anything that I missed. And if I have any follow-up questions, I will be messaging you guys. I'm so unfit. Hope you all have a damn scrumptious night. God willing, I'll see you soon. Take care. Stay scrumptious and Raven out. Let's